honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Well, welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer magically solved the UK's defence budget by slashing foreign aid in half. Well, in the past 3 years, Britain has given away £54 billion overseas, and that's 10 times the Win Your Fuel Allowance bill and 30 times the yearly amount raised by the inheritance tax grab on farmers. So, want to go the full Monty? Is it time to scrap foreign aid altogether? On today's show, GB News can exclusively reveal that 2,000 small boat migrants have crossed illegally from France since the beginning of the year. When will the government start turning it around? And we'll have all the latest reaction to these new depressing numbers. And bearded belly dancers, skyscrapers and golden statues. No, it's not a dream night out with me. This is appearing in the US president's apparent plans for Gaza in an AI video. It's an astonishing eye-popper. We'll discuss whether this really could become a reality, or is it just Donald Trump once again trolling the entire world? And that's all coming up in your next hour. And apologies for that chilling vision of a night out with me there. But on a serious point, isn't it funny how just a few years ago it was a right-wing opinion, position to say, let's slash foreign aid and charity should begin at home, the defence of the realm. And yet today at PMQs, there's barely a murmur to Sir Keir Starmer's plans. In fact, the Conservatives nodded along vociferously. Even Ed Davey was quiet. The only person who complained was Diane Abbott, but I think that's in her DNA. But isn't the point is, if we can magically solve defence by slashing foreign aid in half, why not go the full Monty? Why not get rid of foreign aid altogether? Then we could perhaps keep pensioners warm in the winter and allow farmers to pass on their farms without fear of losing it to the taxman. Am I being simplistic? Or is that the kind of thing that you would back? Let me know by going to gbnews.com/you'll say. But now's your headlines, and here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines. Kemi Badenoch accused the Prime Minister of copying her proposal to fund an increase in defence spending with cuts to foreign aid. In a clash at Prime Minister's questions, the Conservative leader said she backs the increase, but questions if it's really £13.4 billion a year, as Mr Starmer claims, or closer to £6 billion, as his Defence Secretary suggested this morning.
How is it that the Defence Secretary says 6 billion and he says 13.4 billion? The IFS said today that the government is playing silly games with numbers. How does he find this difference in numbers?
However, Sir Keir Starmer insists the figure is correct and accused Kemi Badenoch of a desperate search for relevance.
She's appointed herself, I think, saviour of the Western civilization. It's a desperate search for relevance. But, Mr. Speaker, look, if you take the numbers for this financial year and then the numbers for the financial year 27-28, that's £13.4 billion increase. That is the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, which will put us in a position to ensure the security and defence of our country and of Europe.
In other news, a White House official has said an invitation for Ukraine's President Zelensky to meet Donald Trump may not make sense, given Zelensky's comments that a minerals deal is not complete. It comes after Zelensky said there are no security guarantees yet in the mineral deal between Ukraine and the US. Ukrainian officials say a deal to share some of Ukraine's mineral wealth with the US is agreed, and President Trump says he expects Zelensky to visit the US to sign the deal this week. But speaking in Kyiv today, Zelensky said he still wants security guarantees and the initial deal is more of a framework. GB News can exclusively reveal more than 2,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel illegally since the start of the year. The latest group of 138 arrived last night, brought into Dover by Border Force after being picked up in UK waters. Earlier, another boat was intercepted after some on board refused French rescue and continued towards Britain. Sources say people smugglers are taking bigger risks, launching even in rough seas after weeks of bad weather. The government is pushing new laws to criminalise those who reject rescue as Labour vows to smash the gangs. Elsewhere, BP has confirmed a major U-turn on green energy, slashing more than $5 billion from its net zero spending each year and ramping up oil and gas production. BP had pledged to cut oil and gas output by 40% by 2030, but the energy giant will now invest up to $10 billion annually in fossil fuels, an increase of 20%. BP CEO calls it a reset with an unwavering focus on long-term shareholder value. Environmental groups and some shareholders warn the shift could backfire, while Greenpeace says BP should brace for pushback at every turn. Now, Liverpool boss Arne Slot has been handed a 2-game ban for confronting the referee after their 2-2 draw with Everton. The FA have released an official statement confirming he'll miss Wednesday's clash with Newcastle and Southampton's visit on the 8th of March. However, he can be on the sidelines for their Champions League tie against PSG. Assistant coach Sipke Hulshoff is also banned for 2 games. Meanwhile, Liverpool and Everton have been fined £65,000 and £50,000 for failing to control their players. Apple says a bug caused iPhones to briefly display Trump when users said the word racist using voice to text. Clips of the glitch have gone viral, with some Trump supporters accusing the tech giant of political bias. Apple says it's rolling out a fix, blaming a speech recognition issue that briefly suggests words with phonetic similarities. It comes amid wider concerns over political bias in tech, after Meta was accused of automatically making users follow Trump and VP J.D. Vance after the US election. And Going for Gold presenter Henry Kelly has died at the age of 78. His family has confirmed the Dublin-born writer and broadcaster died peacefully on Tuesday after a period of ill health. Their statement said Henry will be sorely missed by his friends and family, including his partner Carolyn, their son Alexander, Henry's daughter Siobhan and her mother Marjorie. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank Thank you, Sophia. Now, yesterday, energy prices soared for the third time under Labour, despite them promising, of course, to slash £300 off our annual bills. Yet, at PMQs today, Kemi Badenoch once again appeared to miss the mark, instead cosily agreeing with the Prime Minister on Ukraine. Here's the big question. Is the leader of the opposition up to the job? Well, I'm joined now in studio by GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster. Of course, Catherine, you were at PMQs earlier on. I can't help but feeling that week after week after week we are having a similar conversation. A lot of people felt, of course, Ukraine's a massive story. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer is going to see Donald Trump and this will be top of the agenda. But the cost of living matters to people and energy bills have gone up 3 times in the Labour Party. Kemi Badenoch didn't go on the attack over that. Is she up to the job?
We've had quite a lot of emails, haven't we, about this, saying what I'm interested in is cost of living. And, of course, she didn't go anywhere near that topic at all. I think today is a little bit different in that tomorrow is a huge event, this meeting of the PM and Donald Trump. And there is a time, occasionally in the Commons, where you see unity. And I think we saw that today. But beyond that, where she did try to go after the Prime Minister on both the Chagos Islands, how that's going to be paid for, that deal, and on the nitty-gritty of this defence spending announcement in terms of the actual numbers being pledged, she didn't really manage to nail him down. Now, partly, of course, that's because he simply pretended to answer the question while not answering the questions. But I thought he was very dismissive of her when she tried to take credit for the decision to cut foreign aid. She said, you know, I suggested this at the weekend. That was also in the Reform manifesto. And he basically just said, she didn't feature in my thinking at all. She's appointed herself saviour of Western civilization in a desperate search for relevance. It does feel like somehow she's not just managing to really land the blows on him. And I think a lot of Conservative MPs, part of the reason they put her as leader was that they expected her to perform very, very well in PMQs. And whether that's that the PM has raised his game or whatever, I don't know, but it feels like quite often she doesn't quite mind to land those blows.
Okay, before we move on, can I quickly alert you? You pointed out to me, actually, a poll out today, another eye-popping poll for the Labour Party. They've now slipped into 3rd position for the first time. A poll out by Maureen Common. Tell us more. Yes,
I thought this was very interesting. So it's got the Conservatives on 25 +2, Reform on 24% -2, Labour on 23% -2. So in 3rd place, the current government, of course, it's only a poll, 4 years to the next election, etc. And the Lib Dems up for %. Now, this was taken, these views, between the 21st and 24th of February. And I think it's interesting that Reform appear to have slipped a bit. And I think Donald Trump has come along. That has been great news for Nigel Farage, who's a very close friend. Trump has done a lot of things that many people would like to see happening here. But at the same time, I think his comments over the last couple of weeks have been problematic for many people in terms of it's not clear really if he has our back. He had an hour-and-a-half chat with Putin, and for people that say, you know, judge him by what he does rather than what he says, the other day the US voted with Russia, Belarus and North Korea on a United Nations amendment. That is quite incredible. So I wonder if it could be actually quite tricky for Reform going forward. And the other thing is the Lib Dems up 4. Ed Davey in PMQs, what I noticed was the PM and the government super careful in what they say, ditto the opposition. Ed Davey, because he's not either of those parties, he can say what...
Well, he's got the freedom of never having the opportunity to leave the country. He has the freedom,
and he said, you know, that we won't be able to rely on the US. I think perhaps the fact that he's got the freedom to call things out might be playing in Lib Dems' favour a little bit.
OK, great. So thank you very much, Catherine Forster. Excellent as ever. Now I'd like to bring in my next guest. I'm joined in the studio also by the Conservative MP Andrew Mitchell, who has held a range of roles in the Foreign Office. Mr Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me back on to GB News.
Pleasure to have you here in Westminster. A short walk from your office, of course. I want to talk to you about foreign aid. So Only a short while ago, abolishing foreign aid, slashing foreign aid was considered quite radical. In fact, it was only the Reform Party had it in their manifesto. And yet, now it seems to have gone mainstream in the past 24 hours. The Labour Party agree of practically halving it. Conservatives nodded along. Even Ed Davey was pretty tight-lipped on this. And when you think that overnight we've solved our defence issue by saving the amount we send abroad, about 15 billion quid a year we send overseas, how about scrapping foreign aid altogether? How about paying pensioners their winter fuel allowance, not chasing farmers for their inheritance tax? Couldn't we not just solve all this at a stroke by scrapping foreign aid?
Well, those are all very worthy things. The question is how you fund them, and the second question is whether you scrap British development money. And this is not money sent overseas. This is money often invested overseas. It is sent when we're trying to do something about humanitarian crises. So the humanitarian crises, there's no doubt that the British public has a big heart and they want British development money to go and help on humanitarian crises. But that, as you would say, is not the bulk of it. The bulk of it is invested in the national interest, and if it's not in the national interest, it should not be invested. It's invested to keep us safer. It's invested by tackling conflict overseas, because otherwise conflict can easily wash up on our shores. It's invested to try and stop migration. It's invested, too, to stop disease, which, of course, travels over borders. You've seen the way development money helps stop Ebola spreading, helps stop COVID from proliferating.
That can all be achieved by having tight border control domestically. We don't send money to the third world.
I'm afraid disease doesn't react to borders. It goes across borders.
But, Mr Mitchell, you mentioned the point this money is well spent to decrease migration. That provably hasn't worked. We've got record migration on every front, both legal and illegal.
Well, tackling migration upstream is what development does. And if we don't do that, it will be much, much worse. And never forget what experts have said about not investing in some of the sub-Saharan countries where life is extremely difficult and where there's a lot of conflict. That money goes to help stop hundreds of millions of feet walking north towards the Mediterranean and to Europe. So on those three things alone, trying to stop conflict, addressing disease, proliferation, stopping migration, investing development in the right way is a very, very good spend. And don't forget, this morning, very experienced former Defence Secretary Grant Shapps was making clear that, as we all think, it's the right thing to do to bolster Britain's defence. We need that urgently. Everyone agrees about that. But he was saying the problem with slashing the development budget is that the development budget is often the other side of the coin to defence. And remember, it was General Mattis, who was President Trump's defence secretary, who said when the president in his first term wanted to cut development spending, if you cut development spending, I have to order more ammunition. And we should never forget that the development spend at its best makes us safer and makes us more prosperous, because it makes overseas safer and more prosperous.
Everything you just said would then hint towards it's the bad idea to slash foreign aid, but Kemi Badenoch completely nodded along with Sir Keir Starmer today. Well, so my point is this. Let's go a stage further. For example, £164 million sent to Ethiopia, one of those nations you mentioned, where at risk of famine. Of course, we all remember Live Aid. We all remember the Bob Geldof era. But why is that Britain's problem? And why are we sending £115 million to Afghanistan when a lot of Afghanis are coming into Western nations and committing crimes? Are all of these things not more solvable by having strong border defences?
Well, we do need stronger border defences, so that is absolutely right. But to those 3 points that you have made, firstly, it wasn't the Conservatives who came up with the idea of slashing aid by a further 2 points. We lowered it from 0.7 to 0.5, something I fought against, something Keir Starmer fought against. So don't necessarily say that the Tory party would have funded this through slashing aid, as Jeremy Hunt, the very experienced former Chancellor, made clear. If you were to take back the number of people of working age who are now receiving benefits to the same level it was before COVID, which seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable thing to do, you would save £40 billion. So no one in the Conservative Party is saying that it is wrong to increase defence. Where the money comes from is another matter, and there are people in the Tory Party and in the Labour Party who understand that slashing it in this way, as Grant Shapps, the former Defence Secretary, said this morning, is the wrong thing to do. Now then, to your £164 million on Ethiopia, that was last year an initiative organised by Britain, by British ministers, to crowd in money to stop another famine taking place in Ethiopia of the sort we had in 1984.
Why is that laudable as it is, Mr Mitchell, why is that Britain's problem? Voters will say, many Conservative voters would say, Reform voters would say, and it appears Labour voters, they've gone along with this slash of 50% are more or less. Why is sending millions and millions of pounds abroad still a good thing when we have people using food banks? We have pensioners freezing to death. We have a huge amount of people living on the poverty line. We have British veterans who are homeless. We can't contain our borders. We have a housing shortage. How, in this era, can it still be a good idea to send billions of pounds abroad?
Well, as I said, it's not about sending billions of pounds, because a lot of it is invested.
Well, it's money we could invest in Britain, but we don't.
Well, first of all, we should do both those things. We should be tackling all the scourges you've just mentioned.
We should, but we don't.
Well, but the development spend is a fraction of what we spend in public money. You know, it was 0.5, it's now going to be 0.3.
Well, it's 10 times the winter fuel allowance bill. It's 30 times the inheritance tax rate on farmers. That's not small beer.
But it's a tiny fraction of public expenditure. And so the question is, does it do good? Now, my submission is that, first of all, you say, why is it Britain's responsibility? Britain organised money. We put about 120 million into stopping a famine. Actually, 480 million more was put in by countries we organised. So that was a good use of British money, doing our bit to stop a famine. And if you saw those pictures, as we did in 1984, recurring again, don't you think that many Reform voters, Conservative voters, voters across the country would say it is right for Britain to help and stop children from starving to death? And all the polling suggests that they would say that.
And all of the polling might suggest that we would like to see more money spent domestically to help freezing pensioners. It's a debate that will rage and rage.
Well, the answer to that is we need to grow the economy, which Labour is making a spectacular job of failing, not doing the things that were causing growth under Rishi Sunak, and that's the answer. But remember, this budget is pretty small. If ever it's spent badly, that's completely wrong, and I set up the Independent Commission of Aid Impact so that everyone can appeal to them if they think any of this expenditure is bad. Spent at its best, it makes Britain safer and more secure.
OK, excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Andrew Mitchell, for joining us in the studio, and, of course, Catherine Forster, excellent as ever. Thanks to you both. Now, coming up, GB News can exclusively reveal that 2,000 small boat migrants have crossed illegally from France since the beginning of this year. When will the government start taking back control of our borders? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Good morning. Are you all right?
I am all right. All the better for seeing you, my friend.
John, you've been through so much. We've just heard there about you losing your wife and losing your daughter. I'm so sorry to hear about both of those things. And despite all of that and everything you've been through, you continue to just give back. How can you do that? Just take something so negative and turn it into something so positive?
Well, Sheffield is the finest city in England. That's what I think about the Sheffield people and everybody. 250,000 I set out. I beat that. I got that. Just what's got in bucket. So I thought, well, set go ports a bit, are you? So we over 500. And we got that. And I thought, well, why not go say for $1 million? And we got $1 million. This is what I think about my people of Sheffield. It's just entitled my city. Sheffield, my city, that will always be home to me, no matter where I go or whatever sights I will see. Wherever I return, church bells will peal as I come home to the city of steel. A cathedral, cinemas, museums, Sheffield has such beautiful places. Home to a host of people of so many races, living and working in perfect harmony. That's why Sheffield is the greatest place to be. Singing the praises of Sheffield, Sheffield, my Sheffield, as I go forth. For now we are the sporting city of the north. Wonderful people, so happy, so helpful, so kind. Sheffield, no better place you will find.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:23 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, I've got some breaking news for you now, and it's this. The government has refused to rule out using the updated defence budget to pay for the Chagos deal during a bit busy PMQs today. Kemi Badenoch pressed the Prime Minister on whether the government's increased spending includes funding being used for the deal. Now, the PM declined to say whether money for a deal with the Chagos Islands would come out of the increase in defence spending. Let's get more now with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, breaking news line here. Tell us more.
Well, yes, indeed, the questions over just what will happen in terms of that increase in defence spending and whether it may, some or most of it even, be diverted away to fund this Chagos deal has only got more confusing, because we had what is commonplace after PMQs, which is a sort of post-PMQs huddle with the Downing Street spokesman, asked to clarify really what the situation was, whether, as Sir Keir Starmer suggested, or didn't actually clarify, it was possible that there would be money diverted from this uplift to Mauritius, potentially billions of pounds. There was a kind of non-answer that was given by the Prime Minister's official spokesman, according to the political correspondents who were present at that huddle. And it was put to them again that, look, you know, if you can't just outright deny this, then the inference that will be drawn from that is that that is indeed what the government is looking to do. And again, the journalist said that they were presented with a kind of muddled non-answer that left them none the wiser. It's probably worth just reiterating what Sir Keir Starmer said when he was asked this question from Kemi Badenoch in the comments at PMQs, asked whether he could rule out any money from the defence uplift being used to pay off the Mauritians. The Prime Minister said, our capability on defence and security in Europe is what the 2.5% of GDP would go towards, and then said he described the deal being negotiated with Mauritius as extremely important for our security. So again, a kind of non-answer that really leaves us none the wiser, and that's why the Conservatives are now, as a matter of urgency, asking for clarification on this, because understandably I think there would be a good deal of anger within the sort of wider public in the UK if they thought that the military here in the UK was being denied this crucial uplift in finances to pay for this deal with Mauritius over the Chagos Islands. So all of that up in the air. What I can tell you at the moment is that our political editor, Christopher Hope, is hopefully in another huddle and may get some more clarification on this, because remember, of course, he's on his way to the White House to meet Donald Trump, and we don't really know just how lukewarm or otherwise Donald Trump is to the whole Chagos deal in the first place.
As you say, the chopper is airborne on the flight with the Prime Minister. Let's see if he probes the PM on this Chagos matter. Thank you very, very much there, Mark White. Let's get back to studio now, joined by Nigel Nelson. So in a nutshell, what's going on here is that there's miraculously 13 odd billion pounds extra for defence, from slashing foreign aid, and the question was, so, Mr Starmer, are you going to give all that away to the Mauritian Premier to pay off the Chagos deal?
That's right.
The nub of it, right?
That's the nub of it, and then what happened was that Keir Starmer wouldn't make it clear what the answer to that question was.
So it could be a yes.
Well, it could be a yes, or it could be a no. And there was a follow-up briefing from Number 10, and they couldn't make it clear either. So what Number 10 then said is, you've got the Prime Minister's words, but as the Prime Minister's words were unclear, we were no closer to it. The question really comes down to whether or not what money we give to the Chagos Islands, or rather to Mauritius, is going to be defence money. So in that event, you could argue it's part of the defence budget.
But giving away an airbase, how can you justify that as a defence cost?
Well, I mean,
it's the opposite.
We're paying for that. In a sense, we're paying for that airbase because we are effectively leasing that airbase for 99 years.
But it doesn't cost anything at the moment.
No, I know.
It's free at the moment.
But we are doing a deal with Mauritius to give them back the Chagos Islands.
Why?
So well, I mean, that's a different argument. It is a different argument.
But it makes literally less sense if it's a defence issue, like an airbase that Britain currently controls for free in conjunction with
the
America.
Americans control it, but it's our base.
Zero pence cost, as opposed to giving it away to Mauritius and potentially losing control in 99 years to the Chinese. It's double Dutch. It's even more ridiculous to give this away. And if the notion that we slash foreign aid to the whole world and give all that change to Mauritius is incredibly stupid.
I suppose you could argue that foreign aid is going through a very sort of circuitous route back to Mauritius again, where it might have gone in the first place. But no, I mean, I think that the nub of the thing here is, first of all, we don't know how much money we're actually going to pay Mauritius. What Keir Starmer said
could be 8 billion, could be 16 billion.
It could be anything, because what Keir Starmer says is those figures would be ridiculous. He says he's seen a load of figures, the kind you're quoting, and it's nowhere near that kind of amount.
The great British giveaway continues. Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson. Now, here's something you don't hear very often. Congratulations to Croydon, because it's been crowned the UK's fly tipping capital. What a crown, with more illegal dumps than anywhere else in Blighty. Now, shocking figures revealed earlier today show that the council is also paying a hefty price to clean up the mess. And who's there to clean up the mess? It's our man in Croydon. It's GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, welcome to the show. I hope you're not doing any fly tipping while you're there, mate. Tell us more. What a horrible crown to have, the fly tipping capital of Britain.
Yeah, we've been on a bit of a patrol mission today, Martin, and what you're seeing behind me, those watching on television will see a bit of a dump behind us. This is in a public area, mattresses, and it's so common around this area, and obviously the locals are getting really frustrated. Prams, trolleys, as I said, mattresses, open bags of rubbish. It's not hard to find this sort of stuff, and Croydon is a hotspot. London is the worst for this sort of thing, fly tipping across the country. But more broadly, if you look at the national statistics that came out today, it's pretty extraordinary. So 1.15 million fly tipping incidents across the UK, or across England specifically, which is an increase of 6% on last year's data. And actually the number of enforcement actions, all that preventive action against this stuff, is going down. So there's more rubbish and fewer people on the street to stop it happening and to clean up the mess afterwards. Now, if you dig into this even deeper, the most common place for fly tipping was on highways, but then after that it's on it's on sort of residential areas like this and retail areas. Fly tipping incidents, the most common size category, funnily enough, is a small van load, which sounds bad enough. That's about 31% of the total incidents, but 47,000 such incidents from the last year were of a size equal to a tipper lorry load or more. So an enormous amount of rubbish being dumped on the streets. And when you talk to people, of course, they're very angry about it, which is exactly what I did earlier today. And this is what the residents of Croydon had to say to me today.
I'd like to see them catch the people that's doing it, you know, so that people don't do it, you know, the stronger deterrent to stop it.
Local councils should provide more of disposable places where you can just easy access to. Want to check the rubbish, they ask you for a permit. I live in Croydon, I've got my driver's license says Croydon, and he's asking me for a permit.
To make
and
it
then
easier.
all I have to do is just do a U-turn, chuck it, and then I don't do it personally, but that's how people think.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary. One person actually said to me that people around here are making a quick buck out of it by offering to clean it up for you. So some people are getting rich off this, even if everyone else is losing out. Now, we did hear from the Secretary of State for the Environment, which is Steve Reed. It's actually his local constituency here in Croydon. And he said that fly tipping is a disgraceful act which trashes communities, and its increase under the Conservatives is unacceptable. He goes on to say the government will crack down on fly tipping and punish rubbish dumpers, forcing them to clean up their mess. And through the new crime and policing bill, we will also give ministers the power to issue statutory guidance to councils to drive up fly tipping enforcement. Well, they say they've got a mess to clean up, and quite literally they do. They just need to get on with it, Martin, I think.
Adam Cherry, a fantastic report. Well done, mate. This really, really annoys people. Do you know what? Sadiq Khan has got more ULEZ cameras in Croydon than I've got hairs on my head. Surely they can nick these vans that are dropping this rubbish off on streets. Surely they can dole out fines. If you can't move for getting a ticket, if you've got a polluting vehicle, how are they getting away with it? Sadiq Khan would actually welcome the use of those cameras in that capacity. Adam Cherry, live from Croydon, the fly tipping dump of Britain. What a crown. Thank you very, very much for joining us today on GB News. Now, plenty more to come in your next half hour, but now let's get to your news headlines. No, we're not doing that yet. We are doing bearded belly dancers, skyscrapers and golden statues appear in the US president's apparent plans for the Gaza Strip in an AI video. We'll discuss that next. Is it reality? Well, once again, Donald Trump just trolling the entire world. But here's your headlines. Sophie Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 3:33. Sir Keir Starmer has refused to say if the deal to give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius would be funded by the increase in defence spending. The Prime Minister told the Commons that the increase to 2.5% of GDP announced yesterday is for our capability on defence and security in Europe, and described the deal being negotiated with Mauritius as extremely important for our security. Tory MP Kieran Mullen asked Sir Keir Starmer during Prime Minister's questions to give an unequivocal answer on where the money would come from, but the Prime Minister declined to say whether money for a deal with the Chagos Islands would come out of the increase in defence spending. A White House official has said an invitation for Ukraine's President Zelensky to meet Donald Trump may not make sense, given Zelensky's comments that a minerals deal is not complete. It comes after Zelensky said there are no security guarantees yet in the mineral deal between Ukraine and the US. Ukrainian officials say a deal to share some of Ukraine's mineral wealth with the US is agreed, and President Trump says he expects Zelensky to visit the US to sign the deal this week. But speaking in Kyiv today, Zelensky said he still wants security guarantees, and the initial deal is more of a framework. GB News can exclusively reveal more than 2,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel illegally since the start of the year. The latest group of 138 arrived last night, brought into Dover by Border Force after being picked up in UK waters. Earlier, another boat was intercepted after some on board refused French rescue and continued towards Britain. Sources say people smugglers are taking bigger risks, launching even in rough seas after weeks of bad weather. The government is pushing new laws to criminalise those who reject rescue as Labour vows to smash the gangs. In other news, BP has confirmed a major U-turn on green energy, slashing more than $5 billion from its net zero spending each year and ramping up oil and gas production. BP had pledged to cut oil and gas output by 40% by 2030, but the energy giant will now invest up to $10 billion annually in fossil fuels, an increase of 20%. BP CEO calls it a reset with an unwavering focus on long-term shareholder value. Environmental groups and some shareholders warn the shift could backfire, while Greenpeace says BP should brace for pushback at every turn. Elsewhere, Apple says a bug caused iPhones to briefly display Trump when users said the word racist using voice-to-text. Clips of the glitch have gone viral, with some Trump supporters accusing the tech giant of political bias. Apple says it's rolling out a fix, blaming a speech recognition issue that briefly suggests words with phonetic similarities. It comes amid wider concerns over political bias in tech, after Meta was accused of automatically making users follow Trump and VP JD Vance after the US election. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In North Yorkshire, the A59 is blocked each way by an accident on the High Street in Knaresborough, causing delays. In Nottinghamshire, the A60 is closed each way between Bradmore and Ruddington after an accident. In Berkshire, the A4 is closed westbound from Charville to Sonning after an accident, causing long delays towards the closure. And as you divert, the M3 in Hampshire is blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 8 and 9 from the A303 to the A34 north of Winchester, causing long delays towards there. And as you divert, in East Yorkshire, the A22 is closed each way after an accident between Park Corner at Whitesmith and Golden Cross, causing delays. Also in East Sussex, the A259 remains closed along Grand Junction Road off the A23 Palace Pier roundabout in Brighton because of an unsafe building, and train services in Dorset are suspended between Weymouth and Wareham because of an incident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Your time is 20 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, a Holyrood committee is seeking the views of voters on plans to allow MSPs, members of the Scottish Parliament, to be sacked. Well, Scottish Conservative MSP Graham Simpson proposed a Scottish Parliament recall and removal of members bill, which would provide a route for constituents to recall MSPs more easily. Now, currently, members of the Scottish Parliament can only lose their seats if they're sentenced to 12 months or more in prison. Seems astonishing they get away with it for that long. Well, let's go now to GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Tony, welcome to the show. 12 months and you can't be kicked out in any other job. You'd be straight onto the dole queue. Tell us more.
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. I have to kind of confess, I kind of love this story. This is the Holyrood Committee essentially making plans to make a stronger rod for their own back. Now, this is all down to you, as you say, that currently it would take an MSP to be sentenced to prison of 12 months before they risk getting fired. Of course, in England and Wales, that is 10 days suspension or indeed sent to prison. And this isn't just about illegal wrongdoings. Now, this is to target target MSPs who never come and take their seat, and perhaps those, in light of other instances over the last few years that have raised their head, have raised more than a few eyebrows. Now, this indeed has been quite a long-standing thing where the Scottish Parliament has been looked at and thought, why has this taken so long? And indeed, I spoke to the people in the city of Glasgow today. How do you feel about that 12-month gap? And then also, what do you think about making it far more stringent and likened to England? I think we should be able to make it easier so that we can fire our politicians.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, because I think they need firing, a lot of them.
Anyone in mind you'd like to name and shame?
Well, no, I won't name and shame them, but there's quite a few I could do.
12 months seems far too long a time for an MP to be out of the system and representing the people that voted for him. And it also seems to me if he's in jail for 12 months, then he's done something fairly serious, and I don't want him representing me at that point.
As far as Scotland goes, obviously the Scots law is different. I think on the whole, I feel that each case should be taken in its own merit.
Why should they be allowed a year? Nobody else gets a year, do they? So yeah, I do think they should get sacked.
Anyone in particular you think, even in terms of for bad behaviour, do you think who might come up into the...
Well, there's one or two that have just come to mind.
Go on, name and shame.
Can't name.
Now, certainly this is going to be, quite an interesting talking point. And indeed, you might be thinking, well, just do a one-to-one as it is in England, but that is not the case because of Scotland's list MSP systems. But nevertheless, I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't get more naming and shaming here in Glasgow today.
You talk to the people, they speak common sense, and you know what? I think a lot of people would just lock the whole lot of them away into jail. Thank you, Tony Maguire. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the show there. Now moving on, because 8 men accused of sexual offences against 2 teenage girls in Rochdale are on trial at Manchester Crown Court today, and our national reporter Charlie Peters has the latest. Charlie, bring us up to speed.
Well, good afternoon, Martin. These alleged offences stretch from 2001 to 2006, and all 8 defendants are said to be linked to either the taxi trade or market stalls in Rochdale, a town in Greater Manchester. And today we heard evidence from Girl A, one of the 2 complainants in this trial. And she told the court through written evidence and also a video interview with the police about 3 specific incidents that related to her alleged grooming and sexual abuse. First, she referred to Mohammed Zahid, who was said to be an influential stall trader. He sold underwear and socks, and the court heard that the 2 girls in this case were offered discounts on what he was selling when they came to know him. We also learned that as part of the alleged grooming process, he took these girls to the wholesale stock in central Manchester, where he asked for their advice on the best fashion, the latest fashion. And it's from there, Manchester Crown Court heard today, that sexual abuse started. The jury heard an allegation that the girls were taken back to a flat with Mohammed Zahid, where several men were waiting. And Girl A said in evidence read out by Mr. Rossano Scarmadella Casey, the lead prosecution here, the lead prosecuting barrister, that she was especially concerned for her friend, who was particularly vulnerable. She described instances of the girls being used for sex in exchange for vodka and money. She then described another example of alleged abuse involving Mohammed Shahzad, a taxi driver known as Zero. This incident was so harrowing I can't describe it in full, but the jury did react with shock when she described how that abuse, alleged abuse, was filmed by one of the men and distributed. She said that she was taunted at school the next day. Now, all 8 defendants in this trial deny all charges, and the trial continues.
Charlie Peters, thank you for bringing us up to speed, and thank you for being there. Thank you for being there and reporting on this, because anybody who thinks this has gone away is sorely mistaken. Grooming Gangs, Britain and Shame, of course, your excellent documentary is still available on YouTube. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters, for joining us today. Now, on a different note, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there's some fairly wet weather affecting some parts of more southern Europe. We have a band of rain sweeping in, affecting Madeira, also Portugal and western parts of Spain. Some stronger winds here as well. A little bit drier across more central parts, some decent sunshine on offer here, but still more unsettled weather affecting eastern parts of the Med towards Greece, towards Cyprus. There's some heavy rain around, but things are looking drier, not necessarily sunny, into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking further ahead through the rest of this week, we are going to see high pressure building, so most of the rain, the showers will clear away and a decent amount of sunshine on offer tomorrow. But before all that, well, we did have a frontal system marching its way across the UK today. That brought some heavy rain for a time and then plenty of showers following in behind. So more showers to come as we go through this evening, but they will start to ease overnight. That being said, quite a bit of cloud for Northern Ireland, some outbreaks of rain, and also into parts of northeast England, the Midlands and Wales, even a bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground here. But away from the cloudier zone, there will be some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures taking a little bit of a dip. Some places seeing a touch of frost, particularly across some parts of Scotland, the sheltered glens in particular, likely to drop a bit below freezing. So first thing tomorrow morning, a chilly start across Scotland, but quite a bright one. Some showers across northern and western parts. Here they're going to continue through a large chunk of the day, and some of those showers could be a bit wintry at times. A couple of showers around coastal parts of Northern Ireland. Across much of England and Wales, largely dry, but a few showers for parts of Wales and southwest England. Perhaps more frequent showers affecting eastern parts of England, East Anglia towards Lincolnshire, for example. And here it will be quite blustery through the morning, but the winds will ease here and the showers will die out as well. Otherwise then, and for most places, there will be a decent amount of dry, bright, if not sunny weather on offer. Still some showers though continuing towards the northwest. Temperatures around average for the time of year, most places getting to high single figures, some places scraping into double digits towards the south. With that high pressure building as we go through Thursday and into Friday, we will see most of the showers dying out, and a largely calm and clear night means it is going to be a chilly one. So a bit of a frosty start for many of us on Friday morning, but otherwise a largely fine picture, especially towards the south in the weekend, wetter further north.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 and I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, Donald Trump has magnificently issued his plans for the Gaza Strip. Let's take a look. Look at this, it's youngsters going through the hellhole into the paradise. Look, there's Elon Musk having some pita bread and hummus. Bearded belly dancers, a golden Trump balloon, of course a little bit of self-idolation in there. Look at it, a president, playboy, pension. Look at it, it's magnificent. Golden statue of Donald Trump, and of course, a Gaza tower. And there's Netanyahu and Trump on a sun lounger. Is this a vision of hell, or is it a vision of paradise? Let's discuss this now. I'm joined by Nigel Nelson. Now, I think this is brilliant. I think it's hilarious. I think it's an epic troll. I don't think he's being serious. I think he's laying something out there to get the entire world, and especially those on the political left, going. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, we never know when Donald Trump's being serious or not, and that's the real problem. I didn't think back in his first term he was serious about bricking in Mexico, but it turned out that he actually was. He did
the voters wanted it.
Well, they may have wanted it. What I'm saying is I didn't think it was a serious proposition at the time. Then he did it. Now he's back again for his second term. He's talking about doing the whole thing again. He talks about taking Greenland back. Really?
You don't think he means that, do you?
Well, do we know whether he means it or not? Some of the tariffs that he was coming up with, 25% tariffs, would he really wreck the world economy for something like that? Yes, he would. He's already imposed them.
But you have to admit that looks a lot nicer than what we've got in Gaza at the moment.
Certainly, but what about the people who live there?
Well, that's the point. So, would they be moved out of the area into neighbouring states? And is that actually what Donald Trump is intimating at? Look, if there is a humanitarian crisis in Palestine, on the Gaza Strip, why is nobody else in the surrounding area prepared to take those people in?
Well, but for a start, that it's their homes.
Because it could be Hamas.
So the first question is, do Palestinians, ordinary Palestinians, forget about Hamas, ordinary Palestinians want to stay in their home and rebuild it? That's the first question. If they do, they have every right to do so, as anybody does. We would object if we were asked to leave England and say move to Scotland or Wales because our country had been wrecked. It's where home is. So when Trump talks about that would be appalling. Some people call it ethnic cleansing. I wouldn't go as far as that, but it is the idea is an appalling concept. Now, yes, the film may well be
a lot better.
joke.
It does that. It looks Trump's vision of Gaza looks a lot better than Hamas's version of Gaza. It's been flattened.
I know, but there's no
Islamist terrorists.
I know, but
look at it.
There's no Gazans in it. That's the point. That his view of it seems to be, oh, let's build casinos there. Let's turn it into the Riviera. This is somebody's home he's talking about, and it's not for Trump to turn around and say Gazans should move out. It's not for Trump to say anybody should move out.
Well, he's said it, and that's what he does. He makes these huge points, and a lot of people take it literally. Fantastic, Nigel. See you again in the next hour. Now, plenty more coming in the next hour, including, should we completely abolish foreign aid? Think about it. We save defence at a swipe by halving it. Why not go the full Monty? Why not start giving that money to British pensioners, to British veterans and the British homeless? That's next with me, but first, here's your weather with Alex Bergen.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking further ahead through the rest of this week, we are going to see high pressure building, so most of the rain, the showers will clear away and a decent amount of sunshine on offer tomorrow. But before all that, well, we did have a frontal system marching its way across the UK today. That brought some heavy rain for a time and then plenty of showers following in behind. So more showers to come as we go through this evening, but they will start to ease overnight. That being said, quite a bit of cloud for Northern Ireland, some outbreaks of rain, and also into parts of northeast England, the Midlands and Wales, even a bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground here. But away from the cloudier zone, there will be some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures taking a little bit of a dip, some places seeing a touch of frost, particularly across some parts of Scotland, the sheltered glens in particular, likely to drop a bit below freezing. So first thing tomorrow morning, a chilly start across Scotland, but quite a bright one. Some showers across northern and western parts. Here they're going to continue through a large chunk of the day, and some of those showers could be a bit wintry at times. A couple of showers around coastal parts of Northern Ireland. Across much of England and Wales, largely dry, but a few showers for parts of Wales and southwest England. Perhaps more frequent showers affecting eastern parts of England, East Anglia towards Lincolnshire, for example. And here it will be quite blustery through the morning, but the winds will ease here and the showers will die out as well. Otherwise then, and for most places, there will be a decent amount of dry, bright, if not sunny weather on offer. Still some showers though continuing towards the northwest. Temperatures around average for the time of year, most places getting to high single figures, some places scraping into double digits towards the south. With that high pressure building as we go through Thursday and into Friday, we will see most of the showers dying out, and a largely calm and clear night means it is going to be a chilly one. So a bit of a frosty start for many of us on Friday morning, but otherwise a largely fine picture, especially towards the south in the weekend, wetter further north.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Manchester, the M60 is blocked anti-clockwise after a collision. This happens at junction 16 for Pendlebury and Manchester Road. In Derbyshire, the M1 northbound is partly blocked after a breakdown. It's between junction 30 for Worksop and 31 for Sheffield and the A57. In Warwickshire, there are 3 lanes shut on the M6 northbound. There's been a collision involving 3 cars and a van there. Between junction 2 for Coventry and the M69 and junction 3 for Nuneaton. And in Hampshire, the M3 is queuing coastbound after a collision, and that's between junction 8 for the A303 and the turn-off for the A34 at junction 9.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer magically solved the UK's defence budget by halving foreign aid. Well, in the past 3 years, Britain has given away an astonishing £54 billion overseas, and that's 10 times the annual pensioners' winter fuel allowance bill and 30 times the yearly amount raised in farmers' inheritance tax rate. So here's the question. Is it time to go the full Monty? Is it time to scrap foreign aid altogether? And yet another sensational GB News exclusive today, I'll reveal that an incredible 800,000 non-EU nationals from 176 countries were able to blag their way into Britain via the European Union's settlement scheme. How on earth did a city the size of Leeds get into Britain via the European Union? And bearded belly dancers, skyscrapers and golden statues. No, it's not a night out with Jonathan Gullis. This is appearing in the US President's apparent plans for Gaza in an AI video. We'll discuss whether this could become reality, or is this Donald Trump once again epically trolling the entire world? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Now, that obtuse reference to Jonathan Gullis wasn't totally random. I'm joined in the studio by Jonathan now and also Nigel Nelson and Catherine Forster. We're about to have a big old ding-dong about foreign aid. Foreign aid was practically halved yesterday, and at a stroke, defence was resolved. What about going to full Monty? What about getting rid of foreign aid altogether? Why should we send 54 billion quid overseas in the past few years when we have pensioners freezing, we have farmers about to lose their land, we have veterans homeless, we have people penniless on our streets, people unable to get on the property ladder? We've got a terrible problem here. Does charity begin at home? Is it time to scrap foreign aid altogether? Jonathan Gullis thinks that. Nigel Nelson certainly does not. Get ready for an epic ding-dong. Send your comments in, gbnews.com/your say. Is it time to go the full Monty and get rid of foreign aid? That's coming. But first is your headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines. Kemi Badenoch accused the Prime Minister of copying her proposal to fund an increase in defence spending with cuts to foreign aid. In a clash at Prime Minister's questions, the Conservative leader said she backs the increase, but questions if it's really £13.4 billion a year, as Mr Starmer claims, or closer to £6 billion, as his Defence Secretary suggested this morning.
How is it that the Defence Secretary says $6 billion and he says $13.4 billion? The IFS said today that the government is playing silly games with numbers. How does he find this difference in numbers?
However, Sir Keir Starmer insists the figure is correct and accused Kemi Badenoch of a desperate search for relevance.
She's appointed herself, I think, saviour of the Western civilization. It's a desperate search for relevance. But, Mr Speaker, look, if you take the numbers for this financial year and then the numbers for the financial year 27-28, that's £13.4 billion increase. That is the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, which will put us in a position to ensure the security and defence of our country and of Europe.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer has refused to say if the deal to give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius would be funded from the increase in defence spending. The Prime Minister told the Commons that the increase to 2.5% of GDP is for our capability on defence and security in Europe, and described the deal being negotiated with Mauritius as extremely important for our security. Tory MP Kieran Mullen asked Sir Keir during Prime Minister's questions to give an unequivocal answer on where the money would come from, but the Prime Minister declined to say whether money for the deal would come out of the increase in defence spending. In other news, President Zelensky has said the success of Ukraine's minerals deal with Washington depends on his talks with President Trump. It comes after Zelensky said there are no security guarantees yet in the deal between the Ukraine and the US. Ukrainian officials say a deal to share some of Ukraine's mineral wealth with the US is agreed, and President Trump says he expects Zelensky to visit the US to sign the deal this week. But speaking in Kyiv today, Zelensky said he still wants security guarantees, and the initial deal is more of a framework. GB News can exclusively reveal more than 2,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel illegally since the start of the year. The latest group of 138 arrived last night, brought into Dover by Border Force after being picked up in UK waters. Earlier, another boat was intercepted after some on board refused French rescue and continued towards Britain. Sources say people smugglers are taking bigger risks, launching even in rough seas after weeks of bad weather. The government is pushing new laws to criminalise those who reject rescue, as Labour vows to smash the gangs. Elsewhere, BP has confirmed a major U-turn on green energy, slashing more than $5 billion from its net zero spending each year and ramping up oil and gas production. BP had pledged to cut oil and gas output by 40% by 2030, but the energy giant will now invest up to $10 billion annually in fossil fuels, an increase of 20%. BP CEO calls it a reset with an unwavering focus on long-term shareholder value. Environmental groups and some shareholders warn the shift could backfire, while Greenpeace says BP should brace for pushback at every turn. And Going for Gold presenter Henry Kelly has died at the age of 78. His family has confirmed the Dublin-born writer and broadcaster died peacefully on Tuesday after a period of ill health. Their statement said Henry will be sorely missed by his friends and family, including his partner Carolyn, their son Alexander, Henry's daughter Siobhan and her mother Marjorie. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister has magically solved the UK's defence budget by slashing foreign aid. In the past 3 years, Britain has given away an astonishing £54 billion overseas, and that's 10 times the annual winter fuel allowance bill and 30 times the yearly amounts raised in the farmers' inheritance tax raid proposed at the last budget. Now, is it time to go the full Monty and scrap foreign aid altogether? Well, I'm joined in the studio by our political correspondents, Catherine Forster, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and the former Conservative MP, Jonathan Gullis. Gentlemen, welcome. First, I'd like to start with you, Catherine. Let's go back to PMQ today. You were there, as you always are, reporting for GB News. I've got to say, I thought Kemi once again failed to land a glove. There's a common theme emerging. It's all seemed very chummy about Ukraine. Energy bills have gone up 3 times under the Labour Party. They promised £300 off our annual bills. Nothing about that. Not a sausage. A lot of people are saying she's not really particularly good at the ballot box. You were there. What's your take?
Well, I think it's fair enough to have a bit of unity for once today in the Commons, given that the PM is off to try to navigate Donald Trump, which is not easy for anybody. But the Conservatives, I think, thought that she would be excellent at sort of skewering the Prime Minister, and it is not happening, in my opinion. He's very good at dismissing her. She tried to get answers on Chagos, on the specifics of the defence numbers that have been announced. He didn't answer those questions. Now, that's not all her fault, but he just seems so confident. And when she tried to claim a bit of credit, saying, you know, I suggested cutting foreign aid, he absolutely just swatted her away and said she's appointed herself the saviour of Western civilization in a desperate search for relevance. Absolutely quite sort of mocking. And yeah, she's struggling to land a blow, it seems.
And a crumb of comfort, though. Let's talk about the poll you alerted me to earlier on, the More in Common poll. Incredibly, it's got Labour Party now falling into 3rd position, falling faster than a Mike Amesbury constituent.
Well, yeah, this is a More in Common poll was taken 21st to 24th of February. It's got Labour in 3rd position, 23%, down to Tories on 25, up to, but I think these two are interesting. Reform at 24, that's down to, and the Lib Dems have gone up 4. And I do wonder, first of all, with the Lib Dems, Ed Davies, the only person in the Commons, can really tell it how he sees it, because
he'll never get in power.
Well,
so
he can, can't he? He's not on a plane to meet Trump. He's not the official opposition and the sister party of the Republicans. And he's saying, you know, we can't rely on America. We won't be able to rely on the US. He's calling out things that Donald Trump is saying that the others can't. So I think maybe they're benefiting a bit from that. And I think maybe, too, some of what Donald Trump is saying is beginning to be difficult for reform, because, sure, Donald Trump's come in like a whirlwind, done lots of stuff that many people are very happy with. But I think some of the things he said about Ukraine and about Europe particularly, bear in mind that the US voted with Belarus and Russia and North Korea the other day in a UN vote, are quite problematic, and I think that could be quite tricky for reform.
OK, great. So stick around. We'll get into our main event, as it were, now. The ding-dong of the afternoon conversation about foreign aid. Of course, I mentioned in the intro there the eye-watering sums of money Britain sends overseas, £54 billion over the past 3 years, 10 times the annual winter fuel allowance, 30 times the inheritance tax raid on British farmers. We're sending £250 million to Ukraine, 164 million quid to Ethiopia. That's an 82% increase. A lot of people saying yesterday, we solve defence at a stroke by slashing it. Why not go the full Monty? Why not get rid of foreign aid altogether? Jonathan Goodis, I'm going to start with you, because I believe that's your position.
Well, look, first of all, the Prime Minister didn't actually solve the defence budget. The 0.2% doesn't actually cover the full increase. So Rachel Reeves is going to have to get quite magical with the accounts ahead of the spring statement in order to actually meet this important target. And it's a shame that actually that target is not being met, as in 2.5% now, this year, with 3% at the end of this Parliament. But look, with foreign aid, I've always held the view that this country should give help as and when it can. But first and foremost, the government's responsibility is to its citizens of the nation who own it, who give us the money. And the idea that David Cameron did this gimmicky 0.7% to try and somehow appeal to Lib Dem voters in certain southwest seats might have been okay in 2015, but we're in a very different economic time and a very different global time. And ultimately, this country should not be forking out when we've got pensioners freezing at home, farmers closing their family farms, small businesses struggling with the national insurance increase, high streets dilapidated, homelessness, not enough houses being built, and so on and so on, many of which things can absolutely be laid at the Conservatives' door for not delivering to, and I accept that criticism as well. Because so it's time for once and for all to scrap the foreign aid.
Could have been done when you were in power for 40 years.
Absolutely, and I advocated for it on the back benches regularly, and I believe that that is what we should be putting forward in our manifesto, and say that when economic times are better and the UK is in a position to help those in other parts of the world, then we will do, whether that be through humanitarian disasters where the UK has always played a part, or whether that be like Ukrainians coming here from a war zone to keep them safe until they're able to return to the home country. This country goes above and beyond, and it's just virtue signalling of the worst kind. And the amount of money that is quite obviously just given away, and I would suggest quite a fraudulent way as well, going to dictators' pockets rather than to actually the people who need it the most, is something we should all be concerned about.
Nigel Nelson, charity should begin at home.
Well, I mean, in a sense this does, because the whole point about foreign aid is it benefits Britain. So if you take the overall figure, for every pound we spend on foreign aid, that creates 22p worth of exports. So that means...
Does it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. It means thousands of jobs in Britain.
What do we export into Ukraine for £250 million, apart from
not Ukraine,
more money?
But if
what do we export to Ethiopia? There's a famine going on. What are the Ethiopians buying off us? Afghanistan, £115 million. You're not telling me Afghanistan is buying things from Britain?
No, but Afghanistan's really important. If we give them foreign aid, it's a way of actually part of our counter-terrorism policy. So if we can help out the Afghans, we've got a presence therefore in Afghanistan.
But we have an Afghan resettlement scheme as well,
that's
as Jonathan said.
But that's different.
What's the money? Where's the money going? Where's the tangible throughput? There's a benefit to Britain.
With Afghanistan, the Taliban's pockets, and we can't trust the Taliban for 1 second that that money's going towards, for example, girls' education.
Jonathan, you'd accept that Afghanistan is a threat to us as far as terrorism is concerned. It bred Osama bin Laden.
But giving the money to the Taliban isn't going to make us secure, because they're the people who want to see the end of the United Kingdom.
But provided that money is spent wisely, and I take your point, if it goes into the wrong pockets, it doesn't get spent.
How can we know it's spent wisely when the Taliban are in charge?
Well, if they've got the money, they also want to help their country. But the important point I'm making is that is a way of countering them sending terrorists our way. So that helps.
Nigel, so I'll give you an example of why I'm concerned genuinely about this, because I went to Iraq in February 2024. And it was amazing to be in Kurdistan, and I was told point blank that there was a really thriving agricultural community and sector in Iraq. And then what happened is the UN at the time said, oh, we've got loads of extra grain from Sweden, we're going to give it to you for free. The Iraqis went, no, because that will undermine our business. No, we must give it to you. It's foreign aid, it ticks our virtue signalling boxes. And what happened? The agricultural sector in Iraq died overnight because all this free grain came in, which they obviously couldn't undercut. And now, lo and behold, what's Iraq reliant on? Is now reliant on foreign aid because we undermine the very sectors.
That can happen, and it's happened with British aid, that we gave British aid to Africa, and in certain parts of it, industries collapsed because we insisted then that our own NGOs actually ran the businesses. You're absolutely right. Foreign aid must be targeted properly. Also, there's the more general thing for the soft power that it can give to a country like ours. If we don't do it, China moves in. We're arguing all the time about the Chagos Islands because we're worried that China will get their hands on it. Part of the point of foreign aid is to get that soft power so China can't get it.
OK, gentlemen, let's bring Catherine Forster in at this point. It is astonishing, though, is it not, Catherine, that a short while ago, maybe even a short while ago, as earlier this week, slashing foreign aid was actually quite a right-wing position. In fact, it was only Reform UK who had it in their manifesto pledge. Today it's gone mainstream.
Yes, and there's lots of Labour MPs very, very unhappy. This is not what they came in thinking they were going to have to do, but they didn't think they were going to have to cut winter fuel allowance for pensioners or all sorts of other things that they've done. But, you know, times have changed, and so it's clearly much easier for the government to cut foreign aid than either put up our taxes even more or make other cuts beyond what they're already going to have to do. We all already knew that Rachel Reeves is in a really tricky position. Her fiscal headroom has vanished and so on and so forth. I think they think this is the easiest option. And I think, I mean, today, John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has written in the Sun and talking about shells, not shellfish, because there was that story a week or two ago, wasn't there, about
prawn breeding in Ethiopia or something.
Clearly there is waste. Clearly there are projects where our money is not being well spent. But I think back to what Andrew Mitchell, who of course used to be in the Foreign Office, said a little bit earlier, that when that money is well spent, it ultimately benefits us because it keeps people in those countries and stops them coming here.
I wonder, Jonathan Gullis, 2 points there. Do we know it's being well spent? How can we possibly know that this money is being well spent when it's going to countries, let's face it, with a dodgy record on corruption? Ukraine is still one of the world's most corrupt nations before the war. You're not telling me it's got better during the war. And secondly, the types of projects, as you said, prawn breeding in Ethiopia, they must think we're prawns. Do you think the voters, the electorate, want this, or would they vote against it, for example, in a referendum?
I don't think the voters want this. I think voters, what they want to see is sensible investment. Now, that can come through the Foreign Office budget in a way that targets well-meaning charities that we know on the ground have accounts that can't be accessed by a governing nation that we seem to be worried about, that have support systems in place to make sure they deliver their projects.
Save the Children, Christian Aid, Oxfam.
So there are certain groups like that. A problem with some groups is, of course, they've got quite dodgy individuals in those countries as well. Like the UN, I think, has shown an abomination in terms of the dereliction of duty to safeguarding in some of these countries too. So I think there's always a need to make sure, as I say, that happens. But charity does begin at home, as far as I'm concerned. And we have to look after our nation. We cannot be telling the country that we have no money in the till, as Labour spent 6 months telling everyone, and then keep magicking up money to go. And having a legally mandated target to have to spend every year 0.7% of gross domestic product means that money gets rushed out the door more quickly in a way that doesn't end up benefiting those countries. And more importantly, doesn't end up benefiting, in my opinion, the UK. I see no evidence in Stoke-on-Trent of how globalisation has worked in any way apart from the fact that ceramic jobs have gone to India, gone to China. We're having dumping in this country, which has undermined the few remaining that stay here, and then we're whacking up taxes on national insurance. Got the net zero madness that's killing the industry too. That is the thing that my people are worried about. High-skilled, high-wage jobs, a good NHS, a good pay packet, roads that you can drive on the high street that's flourishing.
Final word, Nigel Nelson.
OK, a lot of the benefits you don't see. So, for instance, we gave a lot of aid to South Korea. We now have £14 billion annually of business with them as a result of that. We went to Uganda and gave a lot of aid there to try and combat Ebola. That has helped us deal with future pandemics. They're not obvious things. You won't see it on the streets of Stoke-on-Trent, but they're real.
OK, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Jonathan Gullis, Nigel Nelson, and of course, Catherine Forster. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Now, giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway. No, not foreign aid. It's this that you can enter, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's the details you need to enter.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British Giveaway. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, coming up next, the Climate Change Committee are to recommend cutting out 2 kebabs worth of meat a week, drive an electric vehicle, install a heat pump and forget your holidays abroad. Happy days, more on this next with Jim Dale. They want us all to live like Jeremy Corbyn. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
An advert for clothing retailer Next has been banned after it's judged to feature an unhealthily thin model.
Well, the advert, which was a product listing for denim leggings on the retailer's website, was deemed irresponsible by the Advertising Standards Authority after a single viewer complained.
A single viewer, OK. In its defence, Next said the ad was created with a strong sense of responsibility to both consumers and society, and while admitting the model was slim, they added that she had a healthy and toned physique that aligned with the nature of its product, its leggings.
Well, is it irresponsible to feature slim models in adverts? Let's debate this now. We're joined by the showbiz broadcaster and body positivity advocate Danielle Broadbent and the journalist and broadcaster Emma Trimble. Danielle, let's start from you. Did the Advertising Standards Authority get this one right?
Absolutely. I mean, loads and loads of brands sell leggings and they don't need to feature a super slim model to sell their clothing and their leggings. Now, from my point of view, the ASA are not saying that this woman is unhealthy. They're saying the way she's being styled and the way she's posing looks unhealthy. And with such a trend going on at the moment with curvy plus size models in the fashion weeks, the trends of weight loss pens and things that are going around, are we encouraging, when we see adverts like this, vulnerable young teenage girls who are quite vulnerable anyway with body image? Are we encouraging eating disorders?
I think the idea that society is somehow, holding up anorexia as a virtue is just an anachronism. This woman is healthy. She's being body shamed for being healthy. I think people really just need to, and I know this sounds harsh, but I think they just need to get over themselves. It's this kind of scrutiny that is actually leading to people being so fixated on the way that people look.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:25 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Climate Change Committee is an independent advisor to the government on the climate, and they're warning you that we must act now. Now, in order to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, they recommend, amongst other things, driving and flying less, using heat pumps, and worst of all, skipping 2 kebabs worth of meat every single week. It's a joyless, net zero, net joy-free vegan future. And to discuss it, I'm joined by the meteorologist Jim Dale. Jim, do you know what? This sounds like a life of abject misery. Who wants to live their life like Jeremy Corbyn? Perhaps not even Jeremy Corbyn.
I think you've got the name wrong. The name you need to be mentioning is Richard Tice. He's the one who drives the electric car. He's the one who's got a renewables business worth hundreds of thousands, apparently. So I don't know where Jeremy Corbyn's coming in on this at all. And let's be positive about net zero, because a couple of days ago, some figures came out from the government, not the government themselves, independent arbiters of this kind of thing. The actual net zero business, renewables, etc., is worth now, in 2024, the last calendar year, £83 billion, which actually dwarfs the farming industry, dwarfs the advertising industry. This is only going in one direction. It's unstoppable, whether you like it or not. And when we talk about
that's all underpinned by government subsidies, Jim. It's a great giveaway to get people to go on this. People are being whipped into it either by taxation or by subsidies, which, by the way, is more taxation. Let the market decide. People don't want to live a joyless life of having to stay at home all the time and drive electric cars or cycle in 15-minute cities. We want freedom of choice.
Well, look, there is a freedom of choice. I was at our local garage today having a look at electric cars, nice sleek things, nice quiet. That's the future. Look, I don't think there's any argument here. What we're looking at, you're showing pictures of buses and cars going past, etc. It's not just about climate change. Climate change is a big part of this. This is the recommendation made to the government. They don't have to necessarily take all of the aspects of this. But I think this is the general trend anyway. We want a cleaner atmosphere. Does anybody put their hand up and say they don't want a cleaner atmosphere? So
Jim, if China is opening a coal-fired power station once a week, what sweet difference is it going to make if you don't have a kebab tonight?
Simply because they are on the other side of that, they are very, very astute, and they've got the biggest solar power industry in the entire world, along with India going in the same direction.
Because they're selling them to mugs like us and charging us a fortune, and we're offshoring all of our carbon footprint.
You say this, but look, you've got the likes of Richard Tice, Rupert Lowe, who actually have businesses in the renewable energy. Are you saying take that away from them? I'm not sure that they say it very often.
Why are you making this about an attack on the Reform Party? We're talking about we're being recommended by a climate change committee, all of us, every single one of us, to do less of the things that make life worth living. Have less holidays, eat less meat, don't do what you want, stay within a confined area. This is totalitarianism.
Hardly, and the subsidies you mentioned a few seconds ago about to renewables to net zero, they are dwarfed by the subsidies to oil in the last 10 years. So let's make that absolutely clear where the actual subsidies, the tax subsidies, our money has gone. It's gone primarily into fossil fuels. These industries, they do need a lift. That's without question. And it isn't the fact we won't have oil and gas for the next 10 years. We will. It's an evolution, not a revolution. And we have to take this step by step. And as I say, there are people within your own area, and I mention reform simply because they advocate not net zero while they're doing exactly the opposite in terms of their own businesses and driving electric cars. So what is that?
Okay, Jim, you've got an office in Thailand. You go to Thailand all the time. How do you get there? Do you flap your arms?
Look, the last time I was there was about 3 months ago. We have got an office in Thailand. That's absolutely clear, because we are a British company who wishes to expand abroad. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't necessarily go flying every single day, etc. I don't eat a great deal of meat. It's not that I've cut it out completely. As I said, I personally take it step by step, little by little. And I think that's what the government is trying to do. It's not pushing it us and saying we're all going to get poor tomorrow, or it's all, this is the direction of travel. And as I said before, net zero is unstoppable, whether you like it or not.
Well, is that the case? I mean, it has been stopped in America. Drill, baby, drill is the motto there. All subsidies to the renewable sector have been abolished unless they can prove they can provide competitive energy. Why not do the same in Britain? Let the market decide, not the politicians.
You say stopped. I would argue with that the fact that there will be several states, many states, that will not stop. They will continue ahead. Why? Simply because they know what the future is. They want a clean. They want a clean future. They want one that doesn't ramp up climate change. They suffer massively from extreme weather, whether it be climate change or induced or not. And they want to reduce the risk, because those risks are hugely expensive.
Jim, people care, Jim, about the price of stuff, the cost. Net zero isn't any cheaper. We've had 3 rounds of energy bill increases, and the Labour Party, the net zero zealots, Ed Miliband, Mr. Windmill, prices are going up and up and up. We were promised cheaper energy. When's it going to happen?
Martin, the real reason, I think you know this, the real reason for these prices where they are is the natural gas price on the open market.
Drill and own.
Control. That is the market, and it's Ofgem that set these prices, not the government. So your fire is directed in the wrong direction completely. I'll repeat to you: net zero is a good thing. It's unstoppable.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Jim Dow, mostly you are stoppable. Thank you very, very much. Lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including yet another GB News exclusive today. I'll reveal that an astonishing 800,000 non-EU nationals from 176 countries around the world were able to blag their way into Britain via, wait for it, the European Union's settlement scheme. How on earth did a city the size of Leeds blag their way into Britain? That's next, but first, here's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 4:31. Sir Keir Starmer has refused to say if the deal to give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius would be funded from the increase in defence spending. The Prime Minister told the Commons that the increase to 2.5% of GDP is for our capability on defence and security in Europe, and described the deal being negotiated with Mauritius as extremely important for our security. Tory MP Kieran Mullen asked Sir Keir Starmer during Prime Minister's questions to give an unequivocal answer on where the money would come from, but the Prime Minister declined to say whether money for the deal would come out of the increase in defence spending. President Zelensky has said the success of Ukraine's minerals deal with Washington depends on his talks with President Trump. It comes after Zelensky said there are no security guarantees yet in the deal between Ukraine and the US. Ukrainian officials say a deal to share some of their mineral wealth with the US is agreed, and President Trump says he expects Zelensky to visit the US to sign the deal this week. But speaking in Kyiv today, Zelensky said he still wants security guarantees, and the initial deal is more of a framework. In other news, BP has confirmed a major U-turn on green energy, slashing more than $5 billion from its net zero spending each year and ramping up oil and gas production. BP had pledged to cut oil and gas output by 40% by 2030, but the energy giant will now invest up to $10 billion annually in fossil fuels, an increase of 20%. BP CEO calls it a reset with an unwavering focus on long-term shareholder value. Environmental groups and some shareholders warn the shift could backfire, while Greenpeace says BP should brace for pushback at every turn. And Going for Gold presenter Henry Kelly has died at the age of 78. His family has confirmed the Dublin-born writer and broadcaster died peacefully on Tuesday after a period of ill health. Their statement said Henry will be sorely missed by his friends and family, including his partner Carolyn, their son Alexander, Henry's daughter Siobhan and her mother Marjorie. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have arrived on their first joint engagement in Wales for more than a year to mark the nation's annual celebration of St David's Day. William and Kate went head-to-head in a Welsh cake-making challenge as they geared up for St David's Day celebrations. They put on aprons and picked up large rolling pins as they tackled the task to keep up with the orders at a market trader in South Wales. And the future king thanked Mary Berry for his baking success. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2660 and €1.2077. The price of gold is £2,293 and 48 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,718 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The latest GB News travel. Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Leicestershire, the M1 northbound is partly blocked after a vehicle caught fire between junction 20 at Lutterworth and junction 21 for Leicester and the M69. In the West Midlands, the M42 northbound is partly blocked after a collision. It's happened between junction 5 at Solihull and junction 6 for Birmingham Airport and the A45. In Berkshire, the M4 westbound is partly blocked after a collision. That's happened between junction 8-9 for Maidenhead and junction 10 for Wokingham and Bracknell. And in Somerset, there are 2 lanes shut on the M5 northbound after a collision, and that's between junction 21 for Weston and junction 20, the turn-off for Clevedon.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:38 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Donald Trump says he expects Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington on Friday to sign a huge minerals deal after Ukraine agreed to an agreement to split its assets. Now, reports suggest that the US demand for $500 billion in revenue from Ukrainian resources has now been dropped, but there are still no firm guarantees of security for Kyiv. And Trump claims the deal will give Ukraine the right to fight on, although he hasn't confirmed it's a final deal. Well, I'm now joined by a fantastic reporter in Ukraine, and that's Audrey McAlpine. Audrey, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. Before we talk about the minerals deal, I was fascinated by a project you're involved in. I understand you were delivering some aid to a maternity ward deep inside a city that Vladimir Putin wants to take in Ukraine. Tell us about that.
Yes. Hi, Martin. Thanks for having me. So earlier this week, actually on the 3-year anniversary of the invasion, I was in a city called Kherson. Now, this is one of the only regional capitals to ever be taken by Russia. It was liberated in November of 2022 by Ukrainian forces. And we were bringing a UK car. Now, this vehicle drove all the way from Wales down to the city of Kherson, which sits right on the Black Sea in the southern part of Ukraine. And it is a city that is under siege. It is continuously hit all day long with kamikaze drones and glide bombs. And this car specifically was going to a group of midwives who are working out of a hospital where there's a maternity ward literally underground. It's built with European donations to European specs. And this car, basically, it needs to be incognito because these kamikaze drones are targeting civilians and especially targeting emergency vehicles. So it was a very nondescript car that we drove down and delivered to these midwives.
Excellent work and well done on that. Now let's talk about the potential next step. Volodymyr Zelensky expected to be received in Washington, D.C. And on the table is this massive minerals deal. Now, some people are saying this is unfair on Ukraine, but of course, billions and billions of dollars have been poured into Ukraine in terms of defence and aid. And in fact, until very recently, the United Kingdom was repaying a war loan, a war debt with the United States. Is it a fair deal? I mean, you know, if there are huge amounts of minerals underground that America wants, China has been around the world hoovering up lithium and other rare earth metals via soft power in Africa. Is this not a win-win deal? So if Ukraine gets some money out of it, if America helps to mine it, everybody wins.
Yeah, I think for Americans especially who feel that they gave so much, almost $1 trillion during Iraq and Afghanistan, that there is this memory of sort of what are we going to get out of this money that we've given to Ukraine. Now, Ukrainians feel quite understandably the opposite. This morning here in Kyiv, the capital where I am, people woke up to news that this mineral deal had been agreed. And of course, like you said, Zelensky will travel to Washington on Friday. But Zelensky held a huge press conference actually in this building where I am now on Sunday, saying that he would not sign what decades and generations of Ukrainians would have to later pay back. So there's mixed feelings. Certainly in the United States, there's the feeling that people would like to see some of this money given back to them. But in Ukraine, it's quite the opposite feeling.
But it's fair game, is it not? When you look at what China has done, I mean, there's literally billions of dollars given to Africa. They can't get this stuff out the ground. China have helped them in return for rebuilding or building their nation. There's a huge building operation to be undertaken where you are in Kyiv there. A scene, no doubt, still of absolute desolation around the entire countryside. There'll be a huge amount of work to be done. It would make sense to get this from the ground. It would make sense for America to be there to help extract it, to pump this money back into the economy, to help with rebuilding your shattered nation.
Well, exactly. I think while there's still discussions about which security guarantees would go along with this agreement, one can't help but realize that if there was substantial U.S. investment in Ukraine, that, of course, there would be more impetus among the Americans to protect that investment. So I think that, of course, part of the agreement, which I was reading over earlier, does stipulate that things like security guarantees have yet to be ironed out, but are open for discussion. It seems only natural that if the U.S. has this much money invested, that, of course, it would want to secure its investment. And, of course, that would be a sort of a deterrent for Russia to try this again, which is what Ukraine is most worried about happening.
And Audrey, could I quickly ask you about the mood amongst Ukrainians for this war to end? 3 years, battle-weary, a broken country, 1 million young men been slaughtered. What's the appetite to get this over with? And if that comes at a price of some surrender of territory, is that a price that you're hearing from Ukrainians that is worth paying?
Certainly. You know, there are women that I spoke with at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, and we would toast to victory. And when I go back there now with these same women, we're toasting to peace. So the mood on the ground here is that people want peace, they want a just peace, and I think that they are willing to understand that this means possibly giving up some territory. Now, we can't forget, too, that Ukraine owns some of Russia's territory in the north, the Kursk region, which is, of course, also up for negotiation. But I think Ukrainians understand that they probably will not be getting all of their land back. And much of this land, I should say, is mined, it's booby-trapped, and it would be hundreds of years before it was even inhabitable again.
Okay. Okay, back to you there, Audrey McAlpine. Fantastic as ever there from Kyiv in Ukraine. Thank you very much for joining us. Now we've got some live pictures for you now because the US President Donald Trump is holding the first cabinet meeting of his term at the White House. All of his top brass are meeting for the first time, and that should include somewhere in that room Elon Musk. So this is his new cabinet, the cabinet who will be setting out all of these new policies, been rolling out the first time they've gathered publicly since November the 5th in one place. This is the future. Let's listen in. Here's Donald Trump. Now, we're still waiting for a sound connection there. I think we have
a big accomplishment because it was going nowhere until this administration came in. They hadn't spoken to President Putin in 2 years, and so we'll keep you advised. Before we begin the cabinet, I'd like to have Scott and a couple of people say a few things, but most importantly, where are you? This is a gentleman who's going places, the head of HUD, and he's going to say, you all know him, and you're going to say grace, and then we'll have our meeting, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this awesome privilege, Father, to be in your presence. God, thank you that you've allowed us to see this day. The Bible says that your mercies are new every morning. And Father God, we give you the glory and the honor. Thank you, God, for President Trump, Father, for appointing us. Father God, thank you for anointing us to do this job. Father, we pray you'll give the president, the vice president wisdom, Father God, as they lead. Father, I pray for all of my colleagues that are here around the table and in this room. Lord God, we pray that we would lead with a righteous clarity. Father God, that as we serve the people of this country in every prospective agency, every job that we have, Father, we would humble ourselves before you, and we would lead in the manner that you've called us to lead and to serve. Father, the Bible says that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. Well, Father, we today honor you, and in your rightful place, Father, thank you for giving us this opportunity to restore faith in this country and be a blessing to the people of America. And Lord God, today in our meeting, we pray that you would be glorified in our conversation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Scott, that was a very good job you did. You've done that before, haven't you? So Scott Turner's a terrific young guy. He's heading up HUD, and he's going to make us all very proud, right?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Great job. In just over 1 month, illegal border crossings have plummeted by numbers that nobody's actually ever seen before. It's much more than 100%. And we've unleashed American energy at levels that will soon be reported. But we think we're going to get it going very quickly. We have incredible people on the energy front. I think we have really great people on every front. I'll let you know if they're not good, but I think they really are. And we're fighting every day to get the prices down. The inflation is stopping slowly, but part of the reason it's stopping is because of high interest rates and other problems that we inherited. But we have to get the prices down, not the inflation down, the prices of eggs and various other things. Eggs are a disaster. The Secretary of Agriculture is going to be showing you a chart that's actually mind-boggling what's happened, how low they were with us and how high they are now. But I think we can do something about it, Madam Secretary, and I think you're going to do a fantastic job in that position. One of the most important initiatives is DOGE, and we have cut billions and billions and billions of dollars. We're looking to get it maybe to $1 trillion. If we can do that, we're going to start getting to be at a point where we can think in terms of balancing budgets, believe it or not, something you haven't heard in many, many years, decades actually. And it's a big, whether it's this year or next year, I think we'll be very close to balancing budgets. And the DOGE is very important. And Elon is here to give you a summary of what's happening, some of the things they found, some of the horrible things they found, some of the theft and fraud, and we call it waste and abuse, but a lot of fraud, and probably some fraud that we're not going to be able to prove is fraud, but when you hear the names and the places where this money's going, it's a disgrace. But we've requested that a lot of people, we want to make sure that the people are working, so letters were sent out, and I think everyone at this table is very much behind it, and if they aren't, I'd want them to speak up, but they're very much behind it. Letters were sent out to people just to find out if the people exist. Do they work? Who do they work for? Where are they? You know, where have they been working? Have they been working for other companies or other entities at all, or being paid by the government? So they have two jobs, but they're supposed to have one. And the letter asks some simple questions like, what have you done lately? And if they can answer that, because I can tell you everything I've done for the last long period of time, a lot more than a week. And in many cases, we haven't gotten responses. Usually that means that maybe that person doesn't exist, or that person doesn't want to say they're working for another company while being paid by the United States government. So there's a lot of interesting things. It's very unique, but we have a very unique situation because we have a lot of people that were scamming our country. We have a lot of dishonest people. We have a lot of people that took advantage of a lot of different situations, and we're not going to let that happen. So I'm going to ask if it's possible to have Elon get up first and talk about Doge, because it seems to be of great interest to everyone. I will say that there is a large group of people in this country that have such admiration for what we're doing. I got elected with a tremendous vote, winning every swing state, winning the popular vote, winning the counties by thousands of counties. I think it was 2,800 to 500, 2,800 counties to 500 counties. Think of that. And so we have a mandate to do this, and this is part of the reason I got elected. I got elected based on taxes and based on many things in the border, but also based on balancing budgets and getting our country back into shape, and this is a big part of it. So Elon, if you could get up and explain where you are, how you're doing, and how much we're cutting, and it's an honor to have you. He's been a tremendously successful guy. He's really working so hard, and he's got businesses to run. And in many ways, they say, "How do you do this?" And you know, he's sacrificing a lot and getting a lot of praise. How do you do this? And you know, he's sacrificing a lot and getting a lot of praise. I'll tell you, but he's also getting hit, and we would expect that. And that's the way it works. So I'd like to have Elon Musk please say a few words.
Well,
thank you, Elon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually just call myself a humble tech support here because this is actually, as crazy as it sounds, that is almost a literal description of the work that the Doge team is doing, is helping fix the government computer systems. Many of these systems are extremely old. They don't communicate. There are a lot of mistakes in the systems. The software doesn't work. So we are actually tech support. It's ironic that it's true. The overall goal here with the Doge team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country $2 trillion deficits. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt, now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending like over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing, it is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack, and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, I'd like to stack them up, you know. But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt. That's why it has to be done. And I'm confident at this point, knock on wood, you know, knock on my wooden head, there's got a lot of wood up there, that we can actually find $1 trillion in savings. That would be roughly 15% of the $7 trillion budget. And obviously that can only be done with the support of everyone in this room. And I'd like to thank everyone for your support. Thank you very much. This can only be done with your support. So it's really, Doge is a support function for the President and for the agencies and departments to help achieve those savings and to effectively find 15% in reduction in fraud and waste. And we bring the receipts. So people say, like, well, is this real? Just go to doge.gov. We line item by line item, we specify each item. So, and I should say, we will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola, Ebola prevention. I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption. But we do need to move quickly if we're to achieve a $1 trillion deficit reduction in financial year 2026. It requires saving $4 billion per day, every day, from now through the end of September. But we can do it, and we will do it. Thank you.
Would you have any questions of Elon while we're on the subject of those? Because we'll finish off with that. And if you would have any questions, please ask. You could ask me or Elon. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Musk. I just wanted to ask you that President Trump put out a Truth Social today saying that everybody in the cabinet was happy with you. I just wondered if you had heard otherwise, and if you had heard anything about members of the cabinet who weren't happy with the way things were going, and if so, what are you doing to address those any dissatisfaction?
Let the cabinet speak just for a second. Is anybody unhappy with Elon? If you are, we'll throw him out of here. Is anybody unhappy? We have a lot of respect for Elon and that he's doing this, and some disagree a little bit, but I will tell you, for the most part, I think everyone's not only happy, they're thrilled. So go ahead, Elon.
And President Trump has put together, I think, the best cabinet ever. Literally. So, and I do not give false praise. This is an incredible group of people. I don't think that such a talented team has actually ever been assembled. I think it's literally the best cabinet that the country has ever had, and I think the company should be incredibly appreciative of the people in this room.
Thank you. Go ahead, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. Musk. Are there about half of the government employees so far appear to have responded to your request for what they've been doing over the past week? Is there a timeline in place for next moves for people being fired, and when can the American people expect to see results of that?
Yes. Well, to be clear, I think that email perhaps was best interpreted as a performance review, but actually it was a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse? Do you have a pulse and 2 neurons? So if you have a pulse and 2 neurons, you can reply to an email. This is, I think not a high bar, is what I'm saying. This is anyone could accomplish this. But what we are trying to get to the bottom of is we think there are a number of people on the government payroll who are dead, which is probably why they can't respond. And some people who are not real people, like they're literally fictional individuals that are collecting paychecks. Well, somebody's collecting paychecks on a fictional individual. So we're just literally trying to figure out, are these people real? Are they alive? And can they write an email? Which I think is a reasonable expectation for the American public would have at least that expectation of someone in the public sector.
Mr. Musk, roughly 1 million employees.
It's not a high bar, guys. Come on.
Roughly 1 million employees have responded so far to this email. Does that mean that the remaining 1 million or so federal employees now risk being terminated? And is it your understanding and expectation when you post a directive on X that the cabinet secretaries will follow that order? Because several agencies have instructed employees that this is voluntary or not to respond.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it was like last week, the president encouraged me via Truth Social and also via phone call to be more aggressive. And I was like, okay, yes, sir, Mr. President, we will indeed do that. The president is the commander-in-chief. I do what the president asks. And I said, can we send out an email to everyone just saying, what did you get done last week? And the president said yes, so it did that. We got a partial response. We're going to send another email. But our goal is not to be capricious or unfair. We want to give people every opportunity to send an email. And the email could simply be, what I'm working on is too sensitive or classified to describe. Like literally just, that would be sufficient. I think this is just common sense.
And what is your target number for how many workers, employees you're looking to cut total?
We wish to keep everyone who is doing a job that is essential and doing that job well. But if the job is not essential or they're not doing the job well, they obviously should not be on the public payroll.
Wait. I'd like to add that those 1 million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble. I wouldn't say that we're thrilled about it. They haven't responded. Now, maybe they don't exist. Maybe we're paying people that don't exist. Don't forget, we just got here. This group just got here. But those people are on the bubble, as they say. You know, maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe they're not around. I wouldn't say that Biden ran a very tight administration. They spent money like nobody's ever spent money before, wasted money. The Green New scam, all of the different things they spent money on. And you've seen that. We've seen that with some of the things that I read at speeches. I read them and people can't believe when I read them. 20 million here, 30 million here for, you know, a little educational course on something, circumcision, right? Circumcision. $20 million to inform the people of such and such a country on other things and other things other than that. So, yeah, those people are, right now we're trying to find out who those people are that haven't responded. Now, there'll be some agencies, like Marco has people within state that are right now doing very classified, very confidential work, and we understand that, and we've talked, and, you know, we're being a little more surgical. And Marco's doing a lot of things himself. He's and some of the secretaries are. We're going to be going to them. We're going to be talking about it today. We're going to ask them to do their own DOJ. In other words, they'll look in their group and who. I spoke with Lee Zeldin, and he thinks he's going to be cutting 65% or so of the people from environmental. And we're going to speed up the process, too, at the same time. You had a lot of people that weren't doing their job. They were just obstructionists, and a lot of people that didn't exist, I guess, Lee, too. You found a lot of empty spots that the people weren't there. They didn't exist. And I think education is going to be one of those. You go around Washington, you see all these buildings for the Department of Education. We want to move education back to the states where it belongs. Iowa should have education. Indiana should run their own education. You're going to see education go way up. Right now, we're ranked at the very bottom of the list, but we're at the top of the list in one thing, the cost per pupil. We spend more money per pupil than any other country in the world. And yet it's Denmark and Norway, Sweden, and I hate to say this, and you know, we're going to get along very well with China, but it's a competitor. They're at the top of the list. They're among the top 10 usually, and they're a very big country, so we can't use that as an excuse, right? Because we're a very big country too, but we were ranked last time under Biden. We were ranked 40 out of 40. They do the 40 certain nations that they've done for a long time. It seems to be 40 for whatever reason. And we were ranked number 40. A year ago we were 38, then we were 39. We hit 40. And so we're last in that, and we're first in cost per pupil. So I would say that's unacceptable. Lawrence, you have something?
So, Mr. President, I know you like competition, and I know it's early, so which department are you most impressed with? And then to Mr. Musk. That's the first one. Mr. Musk, which department have you received the most resistance from? Mr. President,
well, I think both of those questions are a little bit, well, you're a pretty controversial guy. Look, it's very early. Right now, I think I'm impressed with everybody. So far, everybody. If I wasn't in the first month, and some of them just got here, they just got approved 2 days ago, right? But I think I'm very impressed with everybody. So far, I'm very happy with all of the choices. I think that Elon has done incredibly with some groups, and some groups are much easier than others. It is true. State is a, you know, very difficult situation. We're right now negotiating very successfully, I think, with Russia and with Ukraine, and we have a lot of countries involved, and we have to be a little bit careful what we do and who we're terminating. But Marco is doing that I think he's going to be very precise. It's going to be, we're cutting down government. We're cutting down the size of government. We have to. We're bloated. We're sloppy. We have a lot of people that aren't doing their job. We have a lot of people that don't exist. You look at Social Security as an example. I mean, you have so many people in Social Security where, if you believe it, they're 200 years old. And what we're doing is finding out, are checks going out for that? And is somebody cashing those checks who's maybe 35 years old, okay? So there's a lot of dishonesty, there's a lot of fraud. But I think at this moment, I'll take Elon off the spot. I think that he's impressed. He said it very well, better than I can say it, that he's impressed with the people in this room, very impressed, and I am too, and it's too early to say, but I think everybody's on board. They all know. We want to balance a budget. We want to have a balanced budget within a reasonably short period of time, meaning maybe by next year or the year after, but maybe even sooner than that.
Mr. President, your number one issue was the border. We just got new information that they're doxing our federal agents. They're putting their personal information out there, these activists, and they're disrupting the operation. So you got Trinidad Aga running all across the country.
Activists, that's true. And
so what are we going to do about the activists?
Yeah, a lot of those activists are acting illegally, and we'll give that to our Attorney General, and she'll take a look at that very strongly. But we also having a tremendous support from Border Patrol, from ICE. The ICE agents have been unbelievable. Border Patrol, their leadership at Border Patrol has been incredible, and they're working very well. And as you know, and I saw you reporting it this morning, actually, we set records on the least number of illegal aliens coming in, migrants coming into our country that we've had in more than 50 years. And we did this all within a period of weeks because we took over a mess. The world was pouring in. And remember, they were coming in from jails and prisons and mental institutions and insane asylums, and they were gang members and drug dealers. Anybody wanted to come in, they came. And from not just South America, from all over the world. So it's amazing what they've done. And Christy and Tom Holman, the job they've done has been absolutely amazing. We set records for and we want people to come into our country, by the way, but they want to come in, they have to come in legally. I want that to be really understood. We want people in our country, but they have to come in legally.
Can I follow on that, Mr. President, about the Trump gold card idea that you unveiled yesterday?
I hope you like it.
I await more information, but the question is, does this reflect a view on your part that the American immigration system has never been properly monetized as you feel it should be?
Well, not so much monetized. It hasn't been properly run. I get calls from, as an example, companies where they want to hire the #1 student at a school. A person comes from India, China, Japan, lots of different places, and they go to Harvard, the Wharton School of Finance, they go to Yale, they go to all great schools, and they graduate #1 in their class. And they're made job offers, but the offer is immediately rescinded because you have no idea whether or not that person can stay in the country. I want to be able to have that person stay in the country. These companies can go and buy a gold card, and they can use it as a matter of recruitment. At the same time, the company is using that money to pay down debt. We're going to pay down a lot of debt with that. And I think the gold card is going to be used by, not only for that, I mean, they'll be used by companies. I mean, I could see Apple. I've spoken with Tim Cook, and by the way, he's going to make a $500 billion investment in the country only because of the results of the election. And I think because of tariffs. He's going to want to be in the country because of tariffs. Because if you're in the country, there is no tariff. If you're out of the country, you got to pay tariffs. And that's going to be a great investment, I think, that he's making. I know it's going to be a great investment, but we have to be able to get people in the country, and we want people that are productive people. And I will tell you, the people that can pay $5 million, they're going to create jobs. They're going to spend a lot of money on jobs. They're going to have to pay taxes on that too. So they're going to be hiring people. They're going to be bringing people in and companies in. And I don't know, maybe it will sell like crazy. I happen to think it's going to sell like crazy. It's a bargain. But we'll know fairly soon. I think Howard and Scott, a few of you really are responsible for it. But Howard, if you want to discuss that for a couple of minutes, I think I'd like to have you. I think it's going to be a very successful program. This is commerce.
So the EB-5 program, which has been around for many years, had investment of $1 million into projects in America. And those projects were often suspect. They didn't really work out. There wasn't any oversight of it. And so for $1 million investment, you got a visa, and then you came into the country and ended up with a green card. So it was poorly overseen, poorly executed. Then you had our border open where millions of people came through. So the idea is we will have a proper business. We will modify the EB-5 agreement. Christy and I are working on it together. For $5 million, they'll get a license from the Department of Commerce. Then they'll make a proper investment on the EB5, right? And we think Scott and I will design the EB5 investment model because Scott and I are the best people together to do that. So this is joint. This is exactly the Trump administration. We all work together. We work it out to be the best. And if we sell, just remember, 200,000. There's a line for EB5 of 250,000 right now. 200,000 of these gold green cards is $1 trillion to pay down our debt. And that's why the president is doing it, because we are going to balance this budget and we are going to pay off the debt under President Trump.
And to qualify, do you have to promise and make commitments to create a certain number of jobs here in the U.S.?
No, because not all these people are going to be job builders. There'll be successful people, or there'll be people that were hired from colleges, like sort of like paying an athlete a bonus. I mean, Apple or one of the companies will go out and they'll spend they'll buy 5 of them and they're going to get 5 people. Look, I've had the complaint from a lot of companies where they go out to hire people and they can't hire them out of colleges. And you know what they do? They go back to India, or they go back to the country where they came, and they open up a company, and they become billionaires. And they're employing thousands and thousands. There are a lot of examples. There are some really big examples where they were forced out of the country. They graduated top in their class at a great school, and they weren't able to stay. This is all the time you hear it. And the biggest complaint I get from companies, other than over-regulation, which we took care of, but we're going to have to take care of it here because a lot of that was put back on by Biden. But the biggest complaint is the fact that they can't have any longevity with people. This way they have pretty much unlimited longevity. Also with the 5 million, you know, that's a path to citizenship. So that's going to be, it's sort of a green card plus, and it's a path to citizenship. We're going to call it the gold card. And I think it's going to be very treasured. I think it's going to do very well. And we're going to start selling, hopefully, in about 2 weeks. Now, just so you understand, if we sell 1 million, right, 1 million, that's $5 trillion. 5 trillion. Howard was using a different number, but that's $5 trillion. If we sell 10 million, which is possible, 10 million highly productive people coming in, or people that we're going to make productive, they'll be young, but they're talented, like a talented athlete. That's $50 trillion. That means our debt is totally paid off, and we have $15 trillion above that. And now, I don't know that we're going to sell that many. Maybe we won't sell many at all, but I think we're going to sell a lot, because I think there really is a thirst. No other country can do this, because people don't want to go to other countries. They want to come here. Everybody wants to come here, especially since November 5th.
Mr. President, how can you
All these people will be vetted, okay?
Mr. President, on Ukraine, can you talk a little bit about what type of security guarantees you're willing to make?
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that, because it's in, you know, we're talking about Europe as their next door neighbor. But we're going to make sure everything goes well. And as you know, we'll be making we'll be really partnering with Ukraine in terms of rare earth. We very much need rare earth. They have great rare earth. We'll be working with Secretary Burgum and with Chris. You'll be working on that together. And we're going to be able to have tremendous, I mean, this gives us, because we don't have that much of it here. We have some, but we don't have that much, and we need a lot more to really propel us to the next level to lead in every way. We're leading right now with AI. We're leading with everything right now, but we need resources. We have to double our electric capacity. We have to do many things. We have to really triple, if you think of it, the electric capacity from what we have right now, if you can believe it. So I just say this, the deal we're making gets us, it brings us great wealth. We get back the money that we spent, and we hope that we're going to be able to settle this up. We want to settle it. We want to stop. I tell you what, I'm doing it for 2 reasons, but the number 1 reason by far is to watch all these people being killed. I see pictures every week from, I assume satellite pictures mostly, but there's some pictures on site of thousands of soldiers that are being killed. They're being decimated because equipment today, military equipment, is so powerful and so devastating. And number 1, I want to see people stop. And they're not from here. They're from primarily to other countries. And then, by the way, let's talk about the Middle East. We got to solve that problem too. And that's come a long way. We're doing very well in that also. A lot of things are happening on that. But I'm watching soldiers being killed, Ukrainian and Russian soldiers being killed. My number one thing is to get that stopped. My number two thing is I don't want to have to pay any more money, because Biden has spent $350 billion without any chance of getting it back. Now we're going to be getting all of that money back plus a lot more. And we provided a great thing. I mean, we provided something very important. And we'll be working with Ukraine, and because we'll be taking that, we're going to be taking what we're entitled to take. Now, they spent $350 billion, and Europe spent $100 billion. Now, does anybody really think that's fair? But then we find out a little while ago, not so long ago, a few months ago, I found out that the money they spent, they get back. But the money we spent, we don't get back. I said, well, we're going to get it back. And we'll be able to make a deal. And again, President Zelensky's coming to sign the deal. And it's a great thing. It's a great deal for Ukraine, too, because they get us over there, and we're going to be working over there. We'll be on the land. And, you know, in that way, there's sort of automatic security, because nobody's going to be messing around with our people when we're there. And so we'll be there in that way. But Europe will be watching it very closely. I know that UK has said, and France has said, that they volunteered to put so-called peacekeepers on the site, and I think that's a good thing.
Mr. President, you have mentioned the high cost of eggs, and we've seen consumer confidence this week have a sharp drop from last month, the biggest dip in, I believe, 3 years. Why is that, your assessment? Why is that the case, and is there anything you can do?
I think that consumer confidence, if you look at confidence in the nation, it had the biggest increase in the history of the chart. It went up 42 points in a period of like days after the election, since the election. So since the election, the confidence in our nation, including right track, wrong track, the first time it's ever happened where we were on the right track, because this country has been on the wrong track for a long time. So the confidence in business, confidence in the country has reached an all-time high. We have never reached levels like we are right now. Okay.
Mr. President, you've been very clear in saying that as long as you're president, Iran will never get a nuclear weapon.
That's true.
Is it also your policy that as long as you're president, China will never take Taiwan by force?
I never comment on that. I don't comment on anything, because I don't want to ever put myself in that position. And if I said it, I certainly wouldn't be saying it to you. I'd be saying it to other people, maybe people around this table, and very specific people around this table. So I don't want to put myself in that position. But I can tell you what, I have a great relationship with President Xi. I've had a great relationship with him. We want them to come in and invest. I see so many things saying that we don't want China in this country. That's not right. We want them to invest in the United States. That's good. That's a lot of money coming in, and we'll invest in China. We'll do things with China. The relationship we'll have with China will be a very good one. I see all of these phony reports that we don't want them money, we don't want anything to do with them. That's wrong. We're going to have a good relationship with China, but they won't be able to take advantage of us. What they did to Biden was, he didn't know what was happening. He didn't know what he was doing. The administration didn't know what they were doing. It was very sad to watch. But we're going to have a good relationship with China and Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East. We're doing things that, look, when I left, we had no wars. We had defeated ISIS totally. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan withdrawal, the worst withdrawal anybody's ever seen. I think that's one of the reasons that President Putin looked at that. He said, wow, these guys are a paper tiger. Look at, we're no paper tiger. Don't forget, we got rid of ISIS in 3 weeks. People said it would take 5 years. We did it because when I came in, I let them do what they had to do. And the man that headed that operation is now going to be your chairman, right? Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Yes, sir. And Raisin Kane. I liked him right from the beginning. As soon as I heard his name, I said, that's my guy. Okay. Any other questions?
Decreases in crossings at the border for you to continue the pause on tariffs against Mexico and Canada? And
No,
if not,
I'm not stopping the tariffs. No. Millions of people have have died because of the fentanyl that comes over the border.
Even with the 90% drop in border crossings, though, this last month compared to about a year ago?
Yeah, they've been good, but that's also due to us, mostly due to us. I mean, it's very hard. It's right now very hard to come through the border, but the damage has been done. We've lost millions of people due to fentanyl. It comes mostly from China, but it comes through Mexico and it comes through Canada. And I have to tell you that, on April 2nd, I was going to do it on April 1st, but I'm a little bit superstitious, so I made it April 2nd. The tariffs go on, not all of them, but a lot of them, and I think you're going to see something that's going to be amazing. We've been taken advantage of as a country for a long period of time. We've been tariffed, but we didn't tariff. Now, I did, when I was here, we took in $700 billion from China. $700 billion. Not one president in the history of our country took in 10 cents from China. At the same time, China respected us. Now, when COVID came in, that was a different deal. I used to call it the China virus. I guess I can call it the China virus again, but it's an accurate term, but I won't do that out of respect to China.
Immigration enforcement.
On Gaza, I just wondered if there's any progress towards a second phase of the ceasefire.
Well, I'm very disappointed when I see four bodies came in today. These are young people. Young people don't die, okay? Young people don't die. These are young people. 4 bodies came in today. They think they're doing us a favor by sending us bodies. So, look, that's a decision that has to be made by Israel, by Bibi. But Israel has to make that decision. We got a lot of hostages back. But it's very sad what happened to those people. I mean, you had a young lady with her hand practically blown off. You know why it blew up? Because she put up her hand to try and stop a bullet that was coming her way. And it hit her hand and blew off her fingers, big part of her hand. This is a vicious group of people. And Israel's going to have to decide what they're doing. Phase 1 is going to be ending. Think of it, today they sent in 4 bodies. And I will say one thing, though. I've spoken to a lot of the parents and a lot of the people involved. They want those bodies almost as much and maybe even just as much as they wanted their son or their daughter. Amazing. Please, sir, please. My son is dead, but they have his body. Please, can you get it for us? It's the biggest thing. It's incredible, the level. They want the bodies of these people. They're dead. They're dead. And when I saw the ones that came in 2 weeks ago, they looked like they just got out of a concentration camp. Then the following week, a group came in and they weren't as bad and as bad a shape. But Israel's going to have to make a decision. You're right, phase 1 and now phase 2 has started. And today we got some, very, very shit. We knew they were dead, by the way. We knew that they were going to be bodies as opposed to people that were living. But it's a very sad situation. At some point, somebody's going to say, we got to do something about this.
Mr. President, you were just talking about Afghanistan and the botched withdrawal. Have all the generals or command staff that were involved with the withdrawal been fired or relieved of duty?
Well, that's a great idea. I'm not going to tell this man what to do, but I will say that if I had his place, I'd fire every single one of them, Pete. That's a very good question.
Well, it's a question we've thought a lot about. We're doing a complete review of every single aspect of what happened with the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan and plan to have full accountability. It's one of the first things we announced at the Defense Department for that reason, sir. Certainly, General Raisin Kane, who's on his way in, was not a part of that. Instead, was a part of leading the effort against ISIS by untying the hands of warfighters and finishing the job properly and then bringing our troops home. So we're taking a very different view, obviously, than the previous administration, and there will be full accountability.
I don't see big promotions in that group, and I think they're going to be largely gone. I know the man on my left. I think they're going to be largely gone. That was a horrible display. And, I've dealt with the parents and the family of the 13 that were killed. But, nobody ever talks about the 40 that were so badly hurt with the arms and the legs and the face and the whole thing, the missing arms and legs. It was so terrible the way that was handled. And it should have been gone through Bagram. We have a big base with big fences and nobody can get in, and you have, hundreds of acres. instead of a little local airport where the whole place went crazy. That was so badly handled, and I would think that most of those people are going to be gone.
Are we going to take Bagram back?
So I'll tell you what has bothered me very much, very, very much. We give billions of dollars to Afghanistan. Nobody knows that. Nobody knew that. Do you know we give billions of dollars to Afghanistan? And yet we left behind all of that equipment, which wouldn't have happened. You know, we were getting out under me. I'm the one that got it down to 5,000 people. We were going to get out, but we were going to keep Bagram, not because of Afghanistan, but because of China, because it's exactly 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear missiles. So they were going to keep Bagram. We were going to keep a small force on Bagram. We were going to have Bagram Air Base, one of the biggest air bases in the world, one of the biggest runways, one of the most powerful runways in the sense that it was very heavy concrete and steel. You could carry about anything. You could land anything on those runways. We gave it up. And you know who's occupying it right now? China. China. Biden gave it up. So we're going to keep that, and we're going to have a withdrawal, and we're going to take our equipment. We're going to do it properly. We're going to do it we're going to keep the equipment. Well, they ran out. It was, what happened there was, in fact, you know, in all fairness to Putin, when he saw that, he said, well, this is our time to go into Ukraine, I guess, because it was, the timing seemed to be about right. But we send them billions of dollars in aid, which nobody knows. If the American public knew that, they know it now. And if we're doing that, I think they should give our equipment back. And I told Pete to study that. But we left billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of equipment behind. Brand new trucks. You see them display it every year on their little roadway someplace where they have a road and they drive the, you know, waving the flag and talking about America. Beautiful equipment that's all, I mean, the top of the line stuff, brand new stuff. Now it's getting older, but you know what? We're going to pay them. I think we should get a lot of that equipment back. You know that Afghanistan is one of the biggest sellers of military equipment in the world. You know why? They're selling the equipment that we left. We're first. They were second or third. Can you believe it? They're selling 777,000 rifles, 70,000 armor-plated. Many of them were armor-plated trucks and vehicles. 70,000. If you think of a used car lot, the biggest one in the country, if I would say, JD, if somebody had 500 cars, that would be a lot. This is 70,000 vehicles we had there, and we left it for them. I think we should get it back.
Mr. President, the spending bill that passed last night aims to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that, like people that shouldn't be on. People that are illegal aliens and others, criminals in many cases, and that's with Social Security. We have a lot of people. You see that immediately when you see people that are 200 years old that are being sent checks for Social Security. Some of them are actually being sent checks, so we're tracing that down, and I have a feeling that Pam is going to do a very good job with that. But you have a lot of fraud. But no, I'm not. We're not doing anything on this.
Part of your mission, sir. Part of your mission has been. Thank you. I'm sorry. Part of your mission has been to restore executive control over the executive branch. Is it your view of your authority that you have the power to call up any one of or all of the people seated at this table and issue orders that they're bound to follow?
Oh yeah, they'll follow the orders. Yes, they will.
No exceptions.
No exception. Well, let's see. Let me think. Oh yeah, yeah. She'll have an exception. Of course, no exceptions. You know that.
Mr. President, can you clarify the Canada-Mexico tariffs? You had put that 30-day pause, but you just referred to April.
25%.
25%. When does it go into effect?
April 2nd.
April 2nd for Canada-Mexico.
Correct. And for everything.
Well, we have the fentanyl-related is a pause. If they can prove to the president they've done an excellent job, that's what they first do in 30 days.
Have you guys seen any
But then
change?
the overall is April 2nd. So the big transaction is April 2nd, but the fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard if they have.
It's going to be hard.
He'll give them a pause, or he won't. But
It's going
that's
to be
up
hard
to
to
him. We'll see.
satisfy. We lose 300,000 people a year to fentanyl. Not 100, not 95, not 60 like you read. You know, you've been reading it for years. We lost, in my opinion, over the last couple of years, on average, maybe close to 300,000 people dead. And the families are ruined. You know, when they lose a daughter, when they lose a son, the families are never the same. You're never going to be the same. So you're talking about 1 million people. But when the daughters die, I see it, daughters die and the sons die because of fentanyl. And in some cases, I don't even know they're taking it. They're buying something else and it's laced with fentanyl and they end up dying. And I've known many people who've lost children to fentanyl and for other reasons, but to fentanyl, it's such a big killer. And those people are never the same people. I mean, I've seen people that for the rest of their lives, they're not the same people. They're so different, it's not even believable. Dynamic people, happy people they die a miserable death. And that's because of the crap that comes in through China and through Mexico and through Canada. A lot of it comes through Canada. Look, we support Canada. $200 billion a year in subsidies, one way or the other. We let them make millions of cars. We let them send us lumber. We don't need their lumber. We're going to free up our lumber. Lee's going to do that, head of environmental. We're going to free up our lumber. We have the best lumber there is. We don't need their lumber. What do we need their lumber for? When you look at we subsidize them $200 billion a year. Without us, Canada can't make it. You know, Canada relies on us 95%. We rely on them 4%. Big difference. And I say Canada should be our 51st state. There's no tariffs, no nothing. And I say that we give them military protection. They have a very small military. They spend very little money on military. On NATO, they're just about last in terms of payment because they say, why should we spend on military? That's a tremendous cost. Most nations can't afford to even think about it. Why should we spend on military? The United States protects us. And I would say that's largely true. We protect Canada, but it's not fair. It's not fair that they're not paying their way. And if they had to pay their way, they couldn't exist. When I spoke to, let's call it the Prime Minister rather than the governor, but when I spoke to him, I said, why are we giving you $200 billion a year? He was unable to answer the question. I said, why are we letting you make millions of cars and send them in? He was unable to answer the question. Justin Trudeau. Nice guy. I think he's a very good guy. I call him Governor Trudeau. He should be governor because the fact is that if we don't give them cars, we don't have to give them cars. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell cars into the United States. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States. And all I'm asking to do is break even or lose a little bit, but not lose $200 billion. And we love Canada. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. And but honestly, it's not fair for us to be supporting Canada. And if we don't support them, they don't subsist as a nation. Okay?
Mr. President, on the EU tariffs, Mr. President, have you just made a decision on what level you will seek on tariffs in the European Union?
We have made a decision. We'll be announcing it very soon, and it'll be 25%. Generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all other things. And European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products. They use all sorts of reasons why not. And we accept everything of them. And we have about a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. Now, I love the countries of Europe. I guess I'm from there at some point a long time ago, right? But indirectly, pretty directly too, I guess. But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But the European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
What will happen if these countries or the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try. but they can't.
China did. They
are
imposed
pledging to,
tariffs
sir.
that went into effect. China's retaliatory tariffs on the 10th of February. Has there been any impact that you've been able to observe?
That's right. No, they can do it, and they can try, but the numbers can never equal what ours, because we can go off. We are the pot of gold. We're the one that everybody wants, and they can retaliate, but it cannot be a successful retaliation, because we just go cold turkey. We don't buy anymore, and if that happens, we win.
Are you talking to Eric Prince about privatizing deportations?
No, I haven't.
Mr. President, you're in litigation with CBS News. Is this a case that you'd like to see go to trial, or are you open to
With
some
who?
CBS, that 60 Minutes?
CBS?
Yes.
Well, CBS did something that was amazing. Kamala was unable to answer a question properly, and they took the question that they asked and they inserted an answer. They gave her an answer. This was 2 days before the election, right before the Sunday night before the election. And they wrote out they put her words from another question that was asked about a half an hour later, and they put that into the question. Nobody's ever even heard of it before. Nobody's ever heard of anything like this before, but they then did it, they say, on numerous occasions. And the FCC is looking at it very strongly, and everybody's looking at it, but nobody's ever seen anything. Think of it, they took her answers and they changed them. And I don't mean they changed a word or two, or they cut off a half a sentence, or they cut off a couple of words. I mean, I've had that happen too, but that you just say, then they say, well, we want brevity. We wanted to do it for time. They took out her answer and they inserted an entirely different answer that made her sound competent. And they did this, and nobody's ever, I thought I've heard of everything when it comes to that stuff. No, I've never heard of it. Nobody's ever seen. So we sued, and we are in discussions of settlement.
What would a number be? Like 100? What's a number that you would think would be appropriate?
I think it's a lot. It probably did affect the election. I mean, we won by a lot. As I said, too big to rig. But it probably did affect the election. Probably could have won by more. But I could have lost the election because of that. We have to get to honest elections. We have to go back to paper ballots. We have to go back to voter ID. One-day election, ideally, or short term, not these 48-day and 61-day elections where boxes are put in a room and, let's move the boxes because we're putting in a new air conditioning system. Then you see the boxes move, and then you say, well, where are all the boxes? What happened to the boxes that never came back? Now, our elections are extremely dishonest. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in voting and all of these different things that we put in. No other country in the world has it. France went to, they had some of the things that we had, and they went to same-day voting, all paper. And paper is very sophisticated now. It's a very sophisticated form of voting right now. It's a very safe form of voting. The other things for the governors, I wish the governors would do it, because the paper ballots will cost 9% of the machines, and they're 100%. Nothing's foolproof, but they're as close as you get. So we'll see what happens. But on the 60-minute thing, nobody's ever seen anything like it.
And would you link the FCC action to the litigation? I mean, does it make sense?
I don't think it's linked, but probably the lawyers look at it, because I know it's going along. FCC is headed by a very competent person, and you have some very competent people on the board, and so I think they're looking at it very seriously.
Sir, of all the deals that you've done in your life, all the people you've sat across from and negotiated with, is President Putin distinct in any way?
He's a very smart guy. He's a very cunning person, but I've dealt with some people I've dealt with some really bad people. But I will tell you, as far as this is concerned, you have to understand, he had no intention, in my opinion, of settling this war. I think he wanted the whole thing. When I got elected, we spoke, and I think we're going to have a deal. I can't guarantee that. A deal is a deal. Lots of crazy things happen in deals, right? But I think we're going to have a deal. If I didn't get elected, I believe he would have just continued to go through Ukraine, and over a period of time, a lot of people would have been killed. Would have lasted for a period of time. And the reason that Ukraine, and I have great respect for the Ukraine as fighters, they have great fighters, but without our equipment, that war would have been over, like people said, in a very short period of time.
Is there a time?
And if you remember, I gave the javelins, and the javelins are the things that knocked out those tanks right at the beginning of the war. They said that Obama at the time gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. Well, I was the one that did that, but I want to see it come to an end.
Will he have to make concessions, President Putin?
Yeah, he will. He's going to have to. And I believe that because we got elected, that war will come to an end. And I also believe if we didn't get elected, if this administration didn't win the election by a lot, that war would go on for a long time, and he would want to take the whole thing. The big question I had is, does he want to take the whole thing? But the reason, and the Ukrainians are good fighters, I have to say, but without the equipment, without our equipment, we have the best equipment in the world. We have the best military equipment in the world. Without our equipment, that would have been over very quickly.
What concessions would you like to see? What concessions would you like to see?
Oh, I don't want to tell right now, but I can tell you that NATO you can forget about. I think that's probably the reason the whole thing started. And I think, JD, we can say that. Do you have a statement on that? You've been very much involved. I gave him the beauty.
Great. Maybe the hardest question, sir. I mean, look, as the president said, we're not going to do the negotiation in public with the American media. He's going to do it in private with the president of Russia, with the president of Ukraine, and with other leaders. And I think that's how this has to go. I think I just want to push back against some of the criticism I've seen of the administration on this, because every single time the president engages in diplomacy, push back against some of the criticism I've seen of the administration on this, because every single time the president engages in diplomacy, you guys preemptively accuse him of conceding to Russia. He hasn't conceded anything to anyone. He's doing the job of a diplomat, and he is, of course, the diplomat in chief as the president of the United States.
Is being worked out right now, and we're going to be very careful.
Will there be restrictions on, for instance, can Chinese nationals get one? Can Iranian nationals
We're probably not going to be restricting too much in terms of countries, but maybe in terms of individuals. We want to make sure we have people that love our country and are capable of loving the country.
There's a measles outbreak in Texas at the moment in which a child is reported to have died. Do you have concerns about that, and have you asked Secretary Kennedy to look into that?
Well, why don't we, Bobby, do you want to speak on that?
Well, we are following the measles epidemic every day. I think there's 124 people who have contracted measles at this point, mainly in Gaines County, Texas. Mainly, we're told in the Mennonite community. There are 2 people who have died, but we're watching it, and there are about 20 people hospitalized, mainly for quarantine. We're watching it. We put out a post on it yesterday, and we're going to continue to follow it. Incidentally, there have been 4 measles outbreaks this year. In this country last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
You sound a little under the weather yourself right now.
I have a permanently bad throat.
Mr. President, would you send U.S. peacekeepers to support the European peacekeepers? Would you do any sort of U.S.
No, we're going to support Europe, yeah.
And how would we do that?
We're very friendly with Europe. We have a great relationship with Europe. I mean, you could ask for, you could talk about France, you could talk about any of them. I mean, we have a great relationship with Europe.
But how will the United States do that? Would there be boots on?
I mean, you're asking me a question. What are we doing in the field? Let's worry. I hope we have that problem where we can worry about peacekeeping. We got to get there first. But I hope we have the problem of worrying about peacekeeping. That'll be the easiest problem, I think, JD, that we've ever had.
That would be part of the deal, presumably, that the Ukrainians would want.
We'll do it at the time. But peacekeeping is very easy. It's making the deal that's very tough. And again, nobody was speaking to Russia at all. And, probably 1.5 million soldiers have been killed, close to 1.5 million soldiers, not to mention I will tell you, the thing with that horrible war that should have never started would have never started if I were president. And it didn't start for 4 years, and it was not even thought about starting. But the thing with that war is that you're highly underestimating the number of people that have been killed. Far more people have been killed in that war than you talk about. You know, you like to talk about numbers like 1 million people. Well, they had much more than 1 million soldiers killed. But you have a lot of cities that have been knocked to the ground. They're demolition sites, literally demolition sites. Every single building is knocked to the ground. And a lot of people were killed in those buildings. And you'll hear a report, 2 people were minorly injured or just injured a little bit. No, people were killed by the thousands. And there are a lot more people killed in that war than the media wants to talk about, because Biden did a horrible, horrible job. He should have prevented that war. He could have prevented that war. Putin would have never gone in. I'll tell you one thing. He would have never gone in. That war would never have taken place if I were president.
I think what people are trying to understand, Mr. President, is how would the United States, what would you be willing to do to support this European peacekeeping effort? Would there be...
Again, you're asking me the same question. How many times do you have to answer? You're talking about after we make peace. Let me make peace first. Once we make peace, I'll give you all the answers you want. But how many times can you ask the same question?
Is loosening of sanctions on Russia a potential option as part of an overall deal?
No. We have sanctions on Russia. No, I want to see if we make a deal first, but I think we will. I've had very good conversations with President Putin. I've had very good conversations with President Zelensky, and until 4 weeks ago, nobody had conversations with anybody. It wasn't even a consideration. Nobody thought you could make peace. I think you can.
But if
Mr. President,
Putin gets to
just
keep
to bring this...
the land that was claimed by force, if the Russians get to keep the territory that they claim by force, doesn't that send a dangerous message, let's say, to China about Taiwan?
Okay. You try and take it away, right? We're gonna do the best we can. We're gonna do the best we can to make the best deal we can for both sides, but for Ukraine, we're gonna try very hard to make a good deal so that they can get as much back as possible. We want to get as much back as possible.
Mr. President, just to bring this full...
We'll cut it out after maybe this question. Go ahead.
To bring this full circle back to a question.
You always like to finish on a good one.
Sir, they want you to negotiate with them instead of with President Putin.
Back to a question about
the peacekeepers. You have a lot of confidence in us because you assume there's going to be peace. You know, it's possible it doesn't work out. There is possibility. But I hope it does for the sake of humanity, because if you look at the pictures that I've looked at, you don't want to look at them. Go ahead.
I have a question back on these cuts to the federal workforce. You mentioned you're interested in doing another round of this email. When would you like to see that? What would be the deadline? And this time, would it be mandatory?
I think Elon wants to, and I think it's a good idea because, you know, those people, as I said before, they're on the bubble. You got a lot of people that have not responded, so we're trying to figure out, do they exist? Who are they? And it's possible that a lot of those people will be actually fired. And if that happened, that's okay, because that's what we're trying to do. This country has gotten bloated and fat and disgusting and incompetently run. I think we had the worst president in the history of our country. He just left office. I think he's a disgrace, what he's done to our country by allowing millions of people to come into our country like that. And all of the other things, the inflation, which he caused because of energy and stupid spending, to spend hundreds of millions, trillions and trillions of dollars on the Green New scam, a total scam. I have the best energy people, the best environmental people in the world around this table, and they can't even believe he got away with it. And then in leaving office to send $20 billion here and $20 million there and 10 million and 5 million, and they couldn't spend the money fast enough, and let's get it out before Trump gets in. Let's just get it out to anybody. This is a disgrace to our nation, and you don't write the fair thing, but look, you know, the good news, the people see it, and that's why we won the election by so much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. I'll right back here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pulitzer Prize.
Sir, how many peacekeepers are you going to send there?
What will you do? How will...
And that was Donald J. Trump at the White House introducing his new cabinet for the first time. It started with a prayer. Scott Turner, a former NFL player, now the housing secretary, calling about the righteous clarity of God. Blessed is the nation. God is the Lord. God bless Donald Trump. It covered practically every topic on the planet, from measles, Europe, Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, the Green New scam, talking about tariffs on Mexico, tariffs on Canada that will go ahead, China not giving an inch to China. We don't need Canadian lumber. I like Justin Trudeau. I'd like to see him as the governor of Canada, of course, implying that Canada will become the 51st state of America. I'm joined by Nigel Nelson in the studio to analyse almost an impossible task there. We also heard from Elon Musk, of course, the new director of the Department of Government Efficiency, saying they're aiming to save $1 trillion a year, could be sacking as many as 1 million federal employers who don't answer emails. Said this is not a performance review, it's a pulse review. Are you alive? If you're alive, reply to the email. If you can't reply to the email, you're going to lose the job. Nigel, it was an astonishing press conference, and I think one that might set the tempo for Trump v2, a blunderbuss of information. The media could pick over that for a month of Sundays. What was your main takeaway from that?
Well, I mean, I just think that Trump comes across as a complete phenomenon. That doesn't mean he's right, and it doesn't matter what he says. He made all sorts of remarks which were just nonsense. I mean, he was talking about that Europe's only contributed $100 billion dollars to Ukraine. That's not true. We've contributed a great deal more than that. I think he actually said the word million, in fact. Whether he made a mistake or not, I don't know. But there's a whole host of stuff there, but I don't think it matters what he says. It's kind of the tone that comes across. So my main takeaway there was that he seems to be determined to put tariffs on European goods. He doesn't care about how many goods. It could be the entire lot. If we retaliate against him, he says America will go cold turkey. Yep. Things like that. I mean, all this is... If he carries those things out, and there's always a big if with Trump about whether or not he actually means what he says, but if he carries it out, we're looking at really grim economic times, if Britain is included.
But he said, if you do a deal with me, if you're prepared to do a deal, then everything's going to be OK. He was asked specifically, what will you do if a country retaliates to tariffs? Any country. And he said, as you said, they can try all they like, but it won't work. We are the pot of gold. We will go cold turkey, as you said, and not buy anything from them. And isn't that the point of Trump v2? They know they have the economic power, they have the military power, they have the political leverage. And this, to me, no matter what you think about Donald Trump, as you said, he is a political phenomenon, and the people in that room, Elon Musk said, I've worked in business, he's a multi-billionaire, he's the world's richest man. He said, this is the best team of people I've ever worked with. And we heard from a few of them one by one. No matter where you stand politically, this is a room full of action men and action women, and they mean business. They're going to get stuff done, and they're going to put America first.
Yeah, I've no doubt about any of those, that they do mean business, and you're absolutely right, and that's the most important thing. They will put America first. The trouble about all this is it's very dangerous. It's fine if Trump gets his way and people go along with it. Saturday we learned for the first time about trying to take 50% of Ukraine's mineral rights.
Yeah, but he's already changed his mind on that.
Well, he's changed his mind, but it's still going ahead. The point I'm making is that Trump keeps getting his way. So on the basis of that,
but Donald Trump would reply. He said, we gave them billions of dollars. We're going to take what we're entitled to take. The money is ours. We want it back. That's a fair deal. We were recently only paying money back to America for World War II. Billions went in, billions could come out. That might not mean seizing all of Ukraine's assets, but it might mean sharing the spoils of war to pay for the war.
But the point I'm making there, Martin, is on Saturday it sounded like an outrageous, impossible proposal, and Zelensky knocked it out the window. Now we're only on Wednesday, and a deal is being done over that. So that is the way that Trump works. When it comes to Elon Musk, that I think it's mad to try and go to federal employees and say, right, you tell us what you did last week.
Why not?
Well, it's fine.
If you're not working, if you don't exist, you lose your job.
But what would you say if you work for the State Department or you work for the FBI, both of which have been told not to reply to these emails, by the way? If you work for them, well, actually, I was catching a Russian spy last week. Do you put that on your little weekly CV? There is confidential information which they can't share with what is actually a non-governmental agency.
But he was also saying there are people claiming checks for 100-year-old people who are 35 years of age. There is waste everywhere. He said, we will make mistakes. mistakes. And he said, in fact, we cut money to Ebola prevention, and they got that wrong. They changed it. They rectified it. I tell you what, Nigel Nelson, this is going to be an astonishing 4 years, no matter where you stand politically, and we will never, ever, you and I, run out of things to say.
We're on a roller coaster.
Yeah, certainly. What a journey it's going to be. Now, that's all from us today. Thanks for your company. But don't worry, because up next is Tubes & Co., the fierce debate show in town. I'll be back on Farage tonight. I've got an astonishing exclusive about nationalities of unemployed for the first time, brought to you on Farage tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now's your weather, and here's Alex Burkill.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking further ahead through the rest of this week, we are going to see high pressure building, so most of the rain, the showers will clear away, and a decent amount of sunshine on offer tomorrow. But before all that, well, we did have a frontal system marching its way across the UK today. That brought some heavy rain for a time, and then plenty of showers following in behind. So more showers to come as we go through this evening, but they will start to ease overnight. That being said, quite a bit of cloud for Northern Ireland, some outbreaks of rain, and also into parts of northeast England, the Midlands and Wales, even a bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground here. But away from the cloudier zone, there will be some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures taking a little bit of a dip, some places seeing a touch of frost, particularly across some parts of Scotland, the sheltered glens in particular, likely to drop a bit below freezing. So first thing tomorrow morning, a chilly start across Scotland, but quite a bright one. Some showers across northern and western parts. Here they're going to continue through a large chunk of the day, and some of those showers could be a bit wintry at times. A couple of showers around coastal parts of Northern Ireland. Across much of England and Wales, largely dry, but a few showers for parts of Wales and southwest England. Perhaps more frequent showers affecting eastern parts of England, East Anglia, towards Lincolnshire, for example. And here it will be quite blustery through the morning, but the winds will ease here and the showers will die out as well. Otherwise then, and for most places, there will be a decent amount of dry, bright, if not sunny weather on offer. Still some showers, though, continuing towards the northwest. Temperatures around average for the time of year. Most places getting to high single figures. Some places scraping into double digits towards the south. With that high pressure building as we go through Thursday and into Friday, we will see most of the showers dying out, and a largely calm and clear night means it is going to be a chilly one. So a bit of a frosty start for many of us on Friday morning, but otherwise a largely fine picture, especially towards the south in the weekend. Wetter further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems in Somerset continue for the M5 tonight. The motorway stays closed in both directions from junction 24 to 25 north of Taunton, following a serious accident involving a lorry causing long queues. And on the western stretch of the M25, a lorry's broken down, blocking off the inside lane clockwise just south of the M40, causing queues back towards the M4. On the Surrey stretch further round, one lane's closed anti-clockwise from junction 11 to 10 Chertsey to the A3. A car's broken down, not being helped by the roadworks on that stretch, of course. And in South London at Mitcham, the A236 stays closed for a second day westbound on the Western Road for emergency repairs off Hope and Way. And on the M1 in Leicestershire, the inside lane's closed northbound 20 to 21 towards the M69, where a lorry's on fire. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus SMS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla